meeting for Monday, December 13, 2010. And I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with an introduction of late items. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Replace pages 54 to 59, staff report.
Sorry. Go ahead. You're on.
Replace pages 54 to 59, staff reports, DP 674, 775 Terminal Avenue. Replace page 183, information only items, item 12C, toilet rebate program. Add item 16E, correspondence, letter from Mrs. Corinne McMillan, re-opposition to DVP 156 at number 2, 5779 Turner Road. Add item 16F, correspondence, letter from Mr. Kevin Crastle, Chair, Design Advisory Panel, re-opposition to DVP 156 at number 2, 5779 Turner Road.
Okay, could I ask for an agenda, adopting the agenda as amended? Sorry?
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to make the motion to bring forward the delegation David Littlejohn to the front of the agenda. So.
Okay. 16,
yes.
Yeah. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 16.
Move adoption of the agenda as amended.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the adoption of the minutes, please.
Move the minutes be adopted as circulated.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Into presentations now, and the first one, 6A, is delegation pertaining to 2011-2015 financial plan. The second, welcome, sir. Up to 10 minutes.
Fred Taylor of 204 Emery Way. I understand in a recent reports the City of Vancouver had a $20 million shortfall, and council quickly found it to get a zero budget. And I'm just wondering if we could find $5 million or something here between the council or something like that and give us a zero budget. Recently, you've been going through bylaws on garbage and raising rates and putting out food containers and all this. Where's the new trucks? No new trucks yet. For instance, to pick up food waste and garbage, you send 2 trucks around. It costs more money. Why can't the program wait until we got the new truck and save money? 1 driver, 1 truck going around.
I think part of it was trying to introduce it with the RDN, which came in at about the same time, but the staff want to make a... Go ahead.
Your Worship, yes, Mr. Laidlaw will respond.
Your Worship, Mr. Taylor is correct. There are 2 trucks going right now. There is an order for the truck which would handle both those services, and it will be reduced to a single truck. It has taken a little bit longer because the design we've worked with very closely to develop a prototype. So when that is completed and it is successful, it will be the model to order future trucks by.
But I don't understand the method of operation. If we don't have the truck, we stick to the current program until it's available. In tonight's agenda, you have a suggestion by the fire chief to leave the 4-manning crew to on our fire vehicles to negotiations. Who's running the show? Isn't the employer to say whether you want 4 people on a truck or whatever? When you go to medical aid, there's 2 ambulances with 2 people in each. That's 4 ambulance employees, a truck with 4 people in it. And over 60% of their calls are just chasing ambulances. And I think that Mr. Sherry had a good point that you want to get, say, the first truck to satisfy demands of 4 people, but other trucks follow up, which all your incidents take more than 1 truck. You can consider within seconds you've got a second truck at the scene as well. You could even save money. Instead of it going code 2, goes code 3, and they're both practically there at the same time, and you got 6 or more men to satisfy it instead of extra cost to the taxpayer.
Okay, I think there's strong support on council for the 4-man team. Oop, we lost your microphone here. But it's just a matter of trying to find out in the budget how it's going to work.
And the next thing dealing with is extra RCMP. I was present when the two delegations a couple of years ago spoke to a study they were doing in regards to the required number of RCMP per population, etc. But I'm not aware of a council meeting where you've thoroughly discussed this and gone with it. It just seems to be accepted fact to keep increasing the RCMP up to that level. But I can't recall a...
What's that? Does staff have a comment? Go ahead.
Your Worship, yes, I can respond. Last year during the 2010 budget deliberations, Council made a specific, provided specific direction to proceed to authorize the hiring of, I believe it was 24 additional general duty RCMP officers. And that
Thank
was...
you. I'd like to, now you've given me a clue, I'll try and find
Well,
where you can help
just
me.
let him finish. There's a point. Go ahead.
And the first 5 were authorized for 2010 with the an additional 5 in 2011, and those first 10 people have already been hired and are on the streets today.
My next point is council remuneration. You've got a point there, and I think with the times you could go for a 0 increase at this time. I also raised concern in comparison to other municipalities, what benefits they have. I really raised question to 100% medical and dental, which I don't think most of the audience or anyone else has 100% coverage, and for all your families members. I think that needs reconsideration. And another point I'd like to raise is parking. It's always reserves for parking. It's lacking funds sometimes and that sort of thing. And I question giving all city employees a taxable benefit in place of for parking, an amount for parking on their paycheck every month or every payday, and we don't get the money into our pot to help us in parking costs. I think that there should be the deduction for parking fee, not just added to the paycheck as a taxable benefit. Thank you.
Your Worship, it's actually deducted from the paycheck as additional taxes are taken off. However, I understand Mr. Taylor's point about the benefit.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
But there's no money flowing to the city from the paycheck,
That's correct. It's just to the tax
where
department.
I believe it should be if there's a deduction, not as a taxable benefit and give them the money. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Receipt
you.
of the delegation.
Second, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I don't believe there's any other delegations on 6A. And we'll move into 6B. Mr. Mark McDonald. Welcome, sir. You have up to 10 minutes.
I'm on.
Sorry?
I've asked to speak. I requested to speak.
Yes.
Earlier today, in discussion with our city manager, it was advised that I not be present for this delegation's information, and so therefore I'll be exiting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we can show that in the file that Councillor Beswick is sending himself. Okay, welcome, sir. We just need your name, address, for the record.
Mark McDonald, 2535 Elk Trails Way. Dear Mayor and Council, my name is Mark McDonald, and I stand before you as a past president of the Greater Nanaimo Chamber of Commerce and president of Invest Northwest Publishing Limited. We do business at 25 Cavan Street in downtown, where we publish local regional business newspapers. I ask that you please consider to have the City of Nanaimo reimburse Councillor Bill Beswick for the costs of legal fees he's incurred while defending himself against the recent allegations of conflict of interest. Mr. Beswick's legal counsel, Blake Castles and Graydon LLP of Vancouver, has cleared him of any conflict, and I trust that legal opinion has been shared with counsel. Despite the fact he's been cleared, Mr. Beswick has agreed to not participate in further votes concerning Boston Pizza. I hold grave concerns about not only the allegation itself, but the way it came forward and was presented to the public. Sadly, it seems that in public life today, one is presumed guilty with the onus placed on that individual to prove their innocence. With this in mind, I urge Council to take an even broader look at the issue of having elected officials pay for their own legal fees while defending themselves when they're innocent. How many citizens are independently wealthy and can afford to spend large sums on legal bills? Not to mention the modest remuneration for serving on council in the first place. Faced with the threat of such financial hurdles and the increasing hostility towards those who hold public office, why would the average person want to even run for public office? I met Mr. Beswick shortly after I moved to Nanaimo in 1978, and I've always known him to be intensely honest with the utmost integrity. I implore Council to do the right thing and reimburse Mr. Beswick for the legal fees he has incurred while defending himself against these allegations. There was, after all, no conclusive evidence supporting further proceedings on the basis of a perceived conflict. To expect Mr. Beswick or any elected public official for that matter to pay for legal bills in instances like this is really a crime against democracy. And one more reason that other possible future councillors will pass on the opportunity to serve the public interest. I believe something that deserves consideration in this matter is the fact that the Nanaimo Clippers hockey team is a community institution. It has rarely in its entire history been a profitable venture. Whether it was owned by a group of local hockey fans or individual owners, the Clippers have been profitable exactly 1 year since 1998. And that was when the NHL was on strike and the Clippers went to the national championship. The Clippers contribute greatly to Nanaimo, and they rely heavily on the support of the business community in order to cover their bills. Bill Beswick is a minority shareholder on a private company that historically does not make a profit, and in all likelihood will not this year, as attendance is down. In other words, he's not getting rich by it. No Clipper owner ever has. This is the Bill Beswick that I know. Bill received $12,000 in support for the last civic campaign. He never cashed the checks. He openly returned them with thanks to each donor because he didn't want to be perceived to be beholden to them. That's the kind of quality individual that Bill Beswick is, and that's one of the reasons I stand before you today. If the city is to receive legal advice that indicates they shouldn't pay Bill Beswick's legal bills to clear his name, I strongly suggest that opinion be viewed by the Mayor and Council in light of recent events. First, lawyers hired by the city and paid for from the public purse recommended proceeding with conflict of interest allegations against Mr. Beswick. Mr. Beswick then paid from his own pocket to hire lawyers to clear his name on the allegations, which has been received and noted by the city. It cost Mr. Beswick over $15,000, including HST, after-tax dollars, mind you. At his tax rate, that could have been $18,000 or less. Almost half of the annual remuneration that each councillor is paid each year for serving as elected officials. That is staggering and shocking. In other words, if Council decides to stand behind a legal opinion that states Mr. Beswick's legal fees should not be paid back, I strongly suggest that another legal opinion could be obtained that would show that they should be paid back. The big difference is that neither the Mayor nor Council is paying for these opinions personally. It's not coming out of your pockets, it's coming out of the taxpayer's account. And Mr. Beswick, as an individual citizen, is paying to defend himself while serving the public. That's just not right. One might view this as the Goliath of City Hall, with its seemingly bottomless pit of tax dollars, battling David, except David has to pull the pennies out of his own pocket. Mr. Beswick needs to be reimbursed for his legal fees. That's the right thing to do. In regards to the issue of conflict of interest, how far do we as society want to go on this? Do any of you own a home? Then you pay residential taxes. Would it not be then a conflict for you to vote on tax rates for residential property? Or maybe you have a commercial property. Is it not a conflict of interest if you vote on commercial tax rates? Perhaps you own a business that conducts business with the City of Nanaimo. Could the fact that you're paid by the city and do business with the city be a conflict of interest? Where do we stop? If we don't wrestle this issue back to the level of common sense, the only people that will be eligible to run for City Council would be those who don't own a home and don't have a job. If you're not listening to the public on this, you need to. I've had several people who would be excellent candidates for City Council indicate that there's no way they'd be interested in running for public office under the current circumstances. After watching this, why bother? Look at the hassle. Who could afford it? Perhaps this is the right time to introduce a bylaw that covers the legal expenses of elected officials who must defend themselves. If they're guilty, they should then pay their legal bills. That would put the City of Nanaimo in a leadership position in this province and exhibit true justice where innocence is presumed and guilt proven. Repaying Councillor Bill Bestwick's legal bills is expensive. $15,000 is a significant sum. But the cost of not repaying Bill Bestwick's legal fees will be much, much more expensive for the future of Nanaimo. Some of the best and brightest minds available to help govern the city will undoubtedly decide to withdraw their names from running for public office because they simply can't afford it. And we'd all pay for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We have one question. Councillor Unger, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just for the record, Mr. MacDonald, you said that Councillor Bestwick returned all the campaign funds that he was given. He declared in his election expense form that he had received some and listed it as such, I believe, in the area of $6,000.
Well, I was told 12, so...
Yeah, but it was not returned. It was used by him according to his declaration.
Yeah, well,
it's on the website.
Regardless.
Okay, I see no further questions. Thank you, sir.
To the delegation.
Moving second. All those in favour? Opposed? Carried. Could we ask Councillor Bestwick to join us again? And the next item is item 6C. Mr. Andre Molnar Group Developer, and Mr. Robert Boyle Architects regarding DP 674 for 775 Terminal Avenue rather than Crest. You're on. Welcome, sir.
Your Worship, members of Council, thank you for the opportunity to appear tonight. We're here not necessarily...
Sorry, Robert, we do need your name and address for the...
I'm sorry, Robert Boyle, architect Nanaimo, 360 Wesley Street. In our delegation application, we indicated we would be here, first of all, to introduce the developer of the project and, if necessary, to respond to any questions. So we're prepared to do that. So if there are questions, I can address those, but in the meantime, I'd like to introduce Mr. Andre Molnar, the Molnar Group, who could conclude with some comments.
Okay.
Andre Molnar. So Andre has a couple of comments for Council, but if you have any questions relative to the project, perhaps I can respond to them now, if you wish.
Okay. Councillor Unger, you don't have him right now. This is from before. Councillor Bestwick.
Thank you. Nice to see the property being developed. It's been quite some time that it's been vacant, so it's good to see. My question simply would be on the neighborhood buffering on the western side of the property, if you will. So just in terms of any plantation
or fencing or just for noise buffering to the neighbors on that side. You can
On which side is that, sorry?
just the buffering of potential plants or vegetation or fencing to protect the neighborhood on the west side or on the mountain side, which the non-highway side.
As you know, the property is fronts on Terminal.
Yes.
And is the rear of the property is on the ENN right-of-way, and then we have Cypress Avenue, and then a piece of adjacent residential property. The building itself is within a development permit area. It's a corridor, and the building has been brought forward to the street within the guidelines. At the rear, we have a series of parking lots, extensive planting and green spaces, and these are in accordance with the design guidelines for landscaping for the area. That is also, we're also incorporating or addressing access to the footpath along the back. Our intention is to provide a fence for security of the property according to the city's requirements.
Thank you. I'm just thinking too in terms of the 5 stories and the amount of traffic that will be generated in view of the parking lot on that side. And the overhead lights, I'm sure, that will be in the parking lot and so on, that may or may not impact the neighbors. So I'm sure that those things are all being well cared for.
We're dealing with the city on this. The type of lighting is essentially dark sky lighting that lights the parking lot. It does not shine into the residents in the area. And we're coming off Cypress Street rather than Terminal, and it's an internal circulation route, so things should be fine.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Boyle, I'm just kind of curious about the neighborhood review. What was done to contact the adjacent neighbors, and what kind of feedback did you get from them?
Well, the property, first of all, before we had the commission to work on the project, we were part of a number of planning charrettes that dealt with the Newcastle Brecon area, and one of our recommendations was a connection of properties at the rear of the properties to deal with the traffic coming on the terminal. Now, council, under its mandate under the official community plan, has the direction to introduce the project to the neighborhood groups, Newcastle in particular. It's part of the Newcastle Brecon planning area. So planning department unilaterally introduced the project to the committee for that area, and they provided their feedback for the design, location of the building, as did the design panel.
Okay, I just was more curious about the efforts made to communicate with the neighbors on either side and across the street in that general area, and whether there was any negative feedback from them or concerns they expressed to you.
We personally did not seek that because we were dealing with a railroad track, a street, and a terminal on one side, and there was a single-family residence on the other side. That was part of the Newcastle society in that area.
Okay. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Good evening, Mr. Boyle. 2 questions. The first one is, in our staff report on number 53, page 53, it states that an increase in the requested parking variance, which is a variance I think you're asking of 51 or 57 parking stalls, which allows for more landscaped area, is not supportable. Would you tell me why that's not supportable? I'll repeat it. An increase in the requested parking variance, which allows for more landscaped area, is not supportable, it says here in our staff report.
This was a recommendation from the design panel. Is this what you're suggesting? Is that right? Yeah.
Okay.
What we have found in a number of communities now that there is actually recommendations from various planning committees in the various communities to reduce the amount of parking. Matter of fact, many of the energy conservation programs suggest parking, and particularly where you're within walking distance or you have bicycle routes or walking routes and this sort of stuff. Now, the design panel had recommended a greater relaxation than what we actually received. I think, however, planning overruled that, since the design panel is a panel of recommendation, not necessarily authority. So we did have several studies done by the traffic consultant who compared parking in the area of existing apartment buildings, access to public transportation, and more importantly, within 300 meters, we're going from a different type of parking requirement. If you look at the downtown core, one bedroom den require half a parking stall. One bedroom and two bedroom or more require one stall. Right now, we were subject to a 1.66 parking ratio, which is essentially suburban parking. So based upon the fact that we are now incorporating a lighting or system at the intersection of Cypress and Terminal, which can control the parking, we've exceeded we have bicycle parking for every one of the units, plus exterior parking for the bicycles and the distance to the downtown core. Staff was quite content, particularly considering the fact that a survey of the other apartments in the area indicated about a 60% occupancy of the parking stalls. So, and keeping in mind that most of these are one bedroom or dens or bachelors, there's not, and it's not a condominium, it's essentially a rental facility. So I think more than likely in the future you'll see some changes to the parking to accommodate this sort of thing in proximity to the downtown core. So staff was, I think, asked us for a separate study on the parking issue.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Boyle, for that. Your Worship, if I may just have one follow-up. Late in the day today, we received, all of us, a communication from Raymond de Beeld, a local architect with whom I'm sure you're familiar. And he has one portion in there that really speaks to me, and I really would like to have your comment on that. And he writes, of particular concern, and the primary reason for this letter is the fact that the proposed building does not reflect the curve in the road and does not respect, by way of form, scale, setback, or height, the listed heritage building, Wardwell Residence, to the south of it. The private residence you've already referred to after Councillor Bestwick's question, but the curve in the road, wouldn't that have looked a lot better if you'd had the curve in your building?
Well, frankly, we did look at that. Now, with all due respect to Mr. de Beeld, who's an excellent architect, Mr. de Beeld was aware of the planning of this project for some time. He's also a member of the Newcastle area where he could have provided his input. This is a corridor, okay? It is not a single-family residential area. As a matter of fact, our client is expending another $160,000 to put in a traffic light, where one of the other alternatives was to put in an acceleration lane, which would have gone right past Mr. de Beeld's property, which would have made it very difficult for him to even exit onto Terminal Avenue. Now, I've known this particular building that Mr. de Beeld owns for some time, and quite frankly, I think it's one of the nicest in town. And I can remember when there was clubs there and that sort of thing, and I did enjoy going there. But it's not going to affect the character of the particular building in question. But Mr. de Beeld, being an architect, when he bought the building, should have known this was a corridor area and subject to design guidelines. So we put the building where we were supposed to put it after some consultation with planning over a number of weeks and months, that the current design reflects all the design guidelines. So the building allows for the curvature of the road through its landscaping, the extension, the dedication of 4.5 meters of property turned over to the city for future road widening, and also the landscape plan which was done to accommodate that. I think we've done more than our share to deal with a very difficult location. This property has been sitting there for some time, and only through this development, the access lane we're providing at the back and the traffic signals, would this property ever be developed with a development I think is sorely needed by the town in terms of some rental accommodation. We haven't seen rental accommodation in this town for 25 years.
Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Hi, neighbour.
Hi, neighbour.
I'm the house closest to you, next to Mr. de Beeld, on the other side of the tracks, outside of the residential study from the Brecon neighbourhood. I really haven't known this has even been going on since August, which would have been really nice to know, but maybe that's an issue of communication. I'm concerned with the backyard buffer, of course, from a personal perspective, but also that it's a industrial corridor. next to a residential building. And I thought we had a higher standard level of landscaping between residential property and industrial. And this could be multi-unit against residential because the train track, I think, was previously zoned residential. So are you meeting the design guidelines at the back of a multi-unit bordering on residential or industrial?
Which is the industrial?
Well, the train track.
Oh, the train track.
I would consider that industrial, or maybe zoned residential.
Well, it's
a real mix.
It's a real mix. Yes, we are meeting it because it's been through planning on several occasions, and we've adjusted the side yard setbacks accordingly. We do have a buffer along the road. There is the path, the ENN Railway, and then there's another path on the other side. So I think we have a total of about 80 feet between the rear of our property and the property lines on the other side. And, the landscaping and the lighting systems are intended not to have any effect on the properties on the other side of the railroad track.
Well, I'd just like to make sure that is the typical buffer, and I know we're trying to look at more of a local trees and indigenous species. And I know there's a beautiful big cedar right in the middle of the back of the property. I hope that can be saved.
We did have an arborist out there to look at these, and they've discussed it with the city.
I used to feed the homeless under there, but I guess they won't be there anymore.
Yeah, I know. We had to confiscate a lot of magazines and tarps. So.
Okay, Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Mr. Boyle. The Design Advisory Panel made the recommendation that the sidewalk be widened, and you've opted out of widening the sidewalk, and rather than doing that, you're going to remove the land west of the bank. Is there a reason for that?
Yes, in talking with planning and engineering, the dedication of 4.5 meters is for the future widening of Terminal Avenue. And what we've been asked to do is actually start our project and the retaining walls and our landscaping 4.5 meters back. But in the meantime, to landscape that area between the existing sidewalk to the new property line. The point being that at some point in time, if there was anything more done with that sidewalk, it would just have to be removed. So essentially, the city and the developer opted to put the money where it would be the most benefit, and that's for the traffic signal and upgrading Cypress, which will allow better access from the people south of Terminal across Terminal, which is very difficult to cross to get access to the bicycle paths and transportation systems.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Beswick.
Thank you. One question that I omitted to ask, or I forgot to ask, and this may be better responded to from staff, I'm not sure, but as it relates to the traffic signals, is there still contemplation for any other alternative as opposed to a traffic signal, such as a right-in, right-out with a bit of an egress lane going out, as opposed to another traffic signal along that stretch of terminal, or is that a fait accompli?
Your Worship, just to respond to that, the applicant and city engineering worked looking at different alternatives to deal with access onto the site. One of the options that was looked at was an acceleration lane along the front, which would allow for people to get out of the site, but didn't help a great deal in terms of safely getting into the site. And then traffic engineering, their recommendation was to go to the signalized intersection. It also assists with the neighborhood plan, getting a pedestrian route from the ENN trail down to the waterfront using Cypress as the pedestrian route moving down with a safe crossing at the signalized intersection.
So the right in, right out was a contemplation, and traffic lights was preferred?
That's correct.
Thank you.
The traffic lights actually allow access from Cypress on the east side across Terminal Avenue, which the other would not have allowed. So this allows pedestrian bicycles to get across Terminal Avenue safely. Thank you.
Okay, I see no further questions now. Thank you, sir.
I'm just wondering now, Mr. Molnar's traveled over here to just say hi to council, and I think he takes a great deal of personal interest in this project, so maybe he might say a word, if that's okay.
Sorry, which?
Mr. Molnar?
Yes, absolutely, sorry. Welcome, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors. My name is Andre Molnar, 1770 West 7th Avenue, Vancouver. We worked very well with your staff and looking forward to get your approval on this project, which we contemplated a long time. And a lot of thought and love and care went into this project. We hope you give your blessing, and then we can go ahead and build it, and the community will be better off with it. I think we need more rental housing in Nanaimo, new rental housing, and that's what we intend to provide. And we take a lot of pride in our work, and we think we plan to do a first-class project for Nanaimo. Thank you. And
okay, we do have a couple of questions for you, sir.
Please.
Councillor Kidd.
Oh, yeah, Mr. Molnar, I appreciate the designs you've done over my lifetime. I've seen some of them in Vancouver. The little water course that comes from the train track side of the property and cuts into the property, there's no way to make that a continued water feature that would match the property? It's a drainage ditch.
It's being redirected. We have engineered to redirect it.
So it's just a connected water system. It'll go underground?
No, it will be going by the side of the project. Yes, underground.
It wouldn't be a feature?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Good evening, Mr. Molnar.
Good evening.
I'm going to ask you something that has absolutely nothing to do with Terminal Avenue, and it's a personal one.
Water polo oriented? No?
No. I had a long career with Canadian Airlines, Canadian Pacific Airlines,
Yes.
starting in '64. Were we colleagues at one point before
Yes.
you became the big mogul you are?
We could have. I started in 1966 at Canadian Airlines as a flight attendant, and quit 1973 when I was building already as an employee of Canadian Pacific multi-million-dollar buildings. So
how's that for memory?
Great, thank you for remembering. That's great.
Thank you, sir. That'll come up later in the agenda.
Receipt of the delegations.
Second, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The next delegation is the new 6D, D like Delta, and it's Mr. David Littlejohn. Mr. Littlejohn, welcome, sir. You have up to 10 minutes to apprise us of the weather.
Good evening. My name is David Littlejohn. I live at 6 Mackey Road, Nanaimo, BC. And I'm in the tourism business, as probably most of you know. I own and operate, or actually my son does most of the work these days, but anyway, I'm the figurehead at Living Forest Campground. And you're probably familiar with our property. You might not know that we are the largest accommodation provider in Nanaimo. We have more units than the Coast Bastion and the Dorchester combined, and we are also reasonably busy, which you might also not know, throughout the wintertime. We have about 120 units in right now for the winter, mostly seniors from Edmonton, although we have people from lots of cold places around Canada that come out here to the coast to beat the snow. We're not doing quite as well in that regard as Victoria, which has a number of hotels and roofed accommodation that are full all winter long with people from the prairies that come out to stay in Victoria for the wintertime. They've done a little better job at that than we have in Nanaimo. But in any event, one of my pet peeves for a number of years has been that every time I watch the news and the weather, and every time I watch the Weather Network, and every time I listen to CBC in the morning talking about the temperatures and the weather in Nanaimo and Victoria and Vancouver, all of the reports are not from Nanaimo, they're from Cassidy. And Cassidy is 12 kilometers south of town, and it's 8 kilometers inland, and the difference in weather, particularly in the winter, is really quite astonishing. Cassidy gets about 50% more snow than we get here in Nanaimo. That's according to Environment Canada the last 30-year records. They actually have a weather reporting station in Departure Bay, and nobody ever hears from it because it isn't ever used anywhere, apparently. But according to the weather reports from that particular station over the last 30 years, it's significantly, particularly snow, it's actually significantly drier than Cassidy, and it's also significant, well, it's a little bit warmer as well. Anyway, my concern is that I think we should petition Environment Canada to make the Departure Bay recording station the recording station for reporting on Nanaimo. I mean, you listen to the weather on CBC every morning and they call it Nanaimo, but it's sort of like Ryanair, you know. I mean, you book a flight into Paris and it actually lands in Belgium. And no, and really to have all of our reports based 8 kilometers inland down at Cassidy it gives us a much poorer report than we deserve. And you know, I mean, for any business such as mine, it's quite significant because people come here for the winter and they compare us to Victoria, and lo and behold, Victoria has much less snow and much less rain and a little bit warmer temperatures. And so in any event, my request is that Council approach Environment Canada and request that their official weather reporting station for Nanaimo be in Nanaimo, like in the city limits, and I would suggest that since they already have one in Departure Bay, that would be ideal. They might need to upgrade it a little bit. Apparently the one out at the airport has more functions. But anyway, that would be my request.
Okay, well, before you go, I see one more question, but also Mr. Laidlaw on staff has come up somehow with a website, and this website, I believe, records the temperature and the weather, actually, at VIU as well as the Harewood area. And sorry?
It's on Google Earth at every stop along the way.
But if you click on this website, it's very comprehensive. There's a huge amount of information on it, and it deals with that area. But having said that, though, we would be glad to oblige you and send a letter off to see what could be done. But we also have Councillor Unger here.
Have you contacted the Member of Parliament since Environment Canada falls under that? We have 2 members of Parliament for this area, and I think that would be the place to start.
Well, that would be good. I would think that, however, if Council, if the City of Nanaimo contacted the Parliament in our 2 members of Parliament, it would probably hold a lot more clout than a private individual doing that. And I would also suggest, there's actually one at the City Works Yard as well, but I would suggest that we go for the Departure Bay as opposed to the VIU because it's down on the water. And this was sort of prompted. The other day I was in Victoria when we had our little snowfall down in November here, and I was wondering, well, what's it like in Nanaimo? And so, you know, the official report was that we had 14 centimeters in Nanaimo, and they had like 2 centimeters in Victoria. And I went, wow, that much? And I phoned my daughter, and she said, oh, no, there's about 2 centimeters. And later on, I saw the 8 Channel News, and lo and behold, there was only 2 centimeters downtown, but there was 14 centimeters out at the airport. So all the reports all across Canada said that we had 14 centimeters, and Victoria had 2 centimeters. So, you know, I mean, it just seems to me like a no-brainer.
Yeah, good point. We got another question. Councillor Bestwick.
Not specifically a question, but just a statement or a comment. Are we dealing with this item later in the agenda?
I don't believe it is. No, but we certainly could make a motion out if someone would like to.
So this isn't pertaining to any items on the agenda that we're...
No, he's speaking just as a delegation.
Thank you.
Okay. Did somebody move that?
Receipt of the delegation.
Oh, and we'll second it if you'd like to, and then we'll also have you speak to it before we vote here. You're on.
Yes, I'd like to second the motion, Your Worship.
Okay, did you also
Yes,
want
I would. I'd like to make a motion, Your Worship, that we approach Environment Canada.
Let's
Can we do
deal
that
with
now?
receiving of the
Okay, receive first.
All those in
okay.
favor? Okay.
Okay, and now I'd like to make a motion that we approach Environment Canada, requesting that the official weather station be Departure Bay rather than the Nanaimo Cassidy Airport.
Moved and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, sir. We'll move into item 7, Mayor's Report. The council appointments are there. Recommendation that council confirm the council appointments as listed, and there's it covers on page 2 and 3 down to the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board. And so if somebody would like to move.
Move the confirmation.
Okay, seconder? Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Proclamation, we have only one proclamation, and that is 2010 December 26, which is Boxing Day, is Frank Ney Polar Bear Swim Day in the city of Nanaimo. Commission reports. We'll move along into minutes of the Nanaimo Athletic Commission meeting held 2010 October 13th. Commission recommendation that council give the minutes receive the minutes of the Nanaimo Athletic Commission meeting held October 13, 2010.
Move the recommendation.
Moved and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The move into staff reports in blue and the safety, community safety and development, DP 673-554 Albert Street. Staff recommendation that council, 1, support the following variances for development permit. DP 673, side yard setback, east and west property line of 1.5 meters or 4.9 feet, front yard variance of 10 meters or 32.8 feet for an existing building, and allow for a gravel surface in the parking court. And 2, approve the development permit number DP 673 for 554 Albert Street, subject to the development permit not being issued until a road reserve covenant has been secured. And finally, item 3, authorize the general manager of community safety and development to execute the development permit upon security of the covenant.
The 3 recommendations.
1, 2, and 3. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. DP 649. It's 499 Milton Street. Staff recommendation that council, 1, support the following variances for development permit number DP 649. A front yard variance of 5.6 meters or 18.4 feet, and a flanking side yard variance of 3 meters or 9.8 feet. And 2, approve the development permit DP 649 for 499 Milton Street, subject to the development permit not being issued until a road reserve covenant has been secured. And 3, authorize the general manager of community safety and development to execute the development permit upon registration of the covenant. What's your pleasure?
Move the recommendations.
1, 2, and 3, and seconded. Councillor Sherry.
To you, Mr. Chairman, to staff. I noticed that the housing units are moved towards Albert Street as opposed going north, and the access from this property onto Milton Street. Wouldn't it have been better if we'd taken it off Albert Street and have all the parking at that corner?
Your Worship, the layout was determined to be the best manner in which to get the parking spaces on site. Had it been at the other end, the configuration would have been closer to the intersection of Milton and Albert, whereas by putting them where they're located here, it increases the distance from the intersection, and therefore there's safer access and egress from the parking area.
It's just a difference in elevation from the Milton Street to the property that raises my concern and the safety concern once this development's in progress, that's all.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Sorry. Your Worship, I'm wondering, does this meet some of the density infills of the OCP? It seems like we're getting a few of these patchworks. I hate to say it was like we're going back to the 70s with big apartments and project-style homes, but is this meeting the OCP's density issues? There's an infill here, and then there's an infill just up the street from it. Yeah. And there's been one around the corner on Kennedy and such.
Yeah, this part of the OCP was under the old city neighborhood plan, and the planning for the area has been to encourage densification since the early 1990s. So we're beginning to see that type of infill finally taking place, and we've had, I would say, probably half dozen applications similar to this over the last year or so.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, if I may. Could you please explain what the alternative rainwater management plan will be?
Have you got all night? It's
No, just simply.
Essentially what is being sought here is, rather than piping stormwater away in solely in pipes, that you use a portion of the site as what's referred to as a rain garden. So you're allowing percolation of the rainwater into the soil, and it puts less water into the stormwater pipe system. So you see, we're seeing more and more developments taking place. The one that Mr. Boyle was discussing earlier also includes those sort of features, but it's another way to deal. The other one I would suggest is the entrance into Hawthorne, which has quite a pronounced rain garden along the edge of the road there. So it's a way to have water percolate into the groundwater table rather than solely just running through pipes and out into the ocean.
Thank you.
Okay, I see no further questions. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carries. Move into DP 674 for 775 Terminal Avenue. Staff recommendation that Council 1 support development permit DP 674 for 775 Terminal Avenue, including the proposed parking variance of 56 parking spaces. And 2, direct staff to bring development permit DP 674 forward to Council for Council's reconsideration of approval once the following have been secured. Firstly, a blanket right-of-way on-site alternative rainwater management, a blanket right-of-way for a lane through the parking lot, a covenant requiring construction of a signalized intersection at Cypress Street and Terminal Avenue, a covenant to secure bicycle parking and storage on site, a covenant to secure road dedication, and finally, lot consolidation. Move the recommendation. Moved and seconded. I see Councillor Holdham.
Thank you, Your Worship. If and when this project is built, I hope it doesn't unduly influence my colleague's home, because he has a lovely site there.
That's where my neighborhood
But this is one of those projects that conforms and fulfills the official community plan as we've drafted it over the last few years. And so I'm pleased that this kind of development is coming forward. I look forward to it fulfilling some of the objectives of the official community plan, and I certainly support it.
Thank you. I might just mention that Mr. Molnar has an excellent reputation for construction in the Vancouver area, and I know he's been involved with a great many projects over there. And I think one of the deficiencies we've got in Nanaimo is new, modern rental units, and I think this might address that. So I certainly am in support of it. Councillor Kipp.
No, I'm in support of the application as it shows. I'm very concerned, though, with that landscaping across the back. And can staff answer the question, the lane access, the right-of-way through the parking lot, does staff believe that would continue later to maybe service next larger blocks of the lot? I haven't looked at that part of the OCP, considering I just saw this on Thursday.
The intent of the laneway is the lots in that area along Terminal Avenue are narrow, deep lots that extend all the way back to the in-end right-of-way. And the idea is that as we get to the widening of Terminal Avenue, the access onto Terminal will be cut off, and access will have to be by a rear laneway. So we're securing that for the future.
It'll extend right through that nice old grow-up. That's beautiful. Yeah, okay, perfect. Perfect. I can support that.
Anyway, too much information here. Just a question to staff on this one. Do we have any kind of a projected date when any widening might take place on that part, North Terminal Avenue, there along that area in front of 775? How far down the road are we really looking at? Is this a 5 or 8 year project?
I think it's in the more distant futures.
Okay, thank you. All righty, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favour? Opposed? Motion carried unanimously. We'll move into DP 676 at 337 Robson Street. Staff recommendation that council issue development permit DP 696 at 337 Robson Street, which would renew development permit DP 550, including the following variants. Height of the building. The existing zoning requires that those portions of a building greater than 10.7 meters or 35 feet in height be set back 6 meters or 20 feet from the front property line. The proposed building is set back 0.5 meters or 1.6 feet. A proposed variance of 5.5 meters or 18 feet.
Move the staff recommendation.
Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. Councillor Padgett, did you have a question?
Thank you, Worship. A question to staff through you, if I may. This is a renewal application that goes back to October the 20th of 2008. So this renewal, if it passes, is good for another 3 years, and if so, how often can this be renewed? How long do we have to wait till we see some action?
The renewal period would be for 2 years. A development permit is valid for 2 years, and it would be up to the applicant if they wanted to renew again to come back and apply to council if they weren't able to proceed within the next 2 years, and then it would be again a decision of council.
But he could renew it 3, 4, 5, 6 times if we went along with it?
Yeah, I believe the delay here, this permit was just prior to the economic situation of late 2008, and I think it was related to the financial situation as much as anything.
Thank you.
If, Mr. Tucker, if we have multiple development permits on the same site over a period of years, is there any kind of a cost recovery for us, or how is that handled?
Solely through the application fees in terms of the processing applications. Certainly renewals are easier to deal with than ones that we're reviewing for the first time, but the application fees are to assist in the recovery of costs.
Okay. Thank you. I see no further questions on this. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. DP 698 3144 Hammond Bay Road. Staff recommendation that council issue development permit number DP 698 at 3144 Hammond Bay Road with the following variants. 1, watercourse setback. The watercourse setback to Departure Bay is varied from 15 meters or 49.2 feet to between 13.5 meters and 44.3 feet, and 0 meters is identified on Schedule B. Okay. Second. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. DVP 156 at 25779 Turner Road.
Your Worship.
Yes.
If I may make a point of personal privilege, please, prior to this item being brought forward.
Okay.
Thank you. Simply as a point of personal privilege, I wish to make a statement on the upcoming topic. I will be excusing myself from participation on this topic on the basis that I may be perceived to be in conflict of interest in that Boston Pizza has participated in an advertising contract with the Nanaimo Clippers Hockey Club for over a decade, an organization which I have a minority ownership and employment interests. This perception is shared by the City of Nanaimo's lawyer, so therefore the issue cannot be ignored. However, myself and my lawyers firmly believe I have no conflict in that Boston Pizza is one of over 189 visual sponsors supporting the Clipper organization, and their support of our team is definitely not a factor to influence my previous vote. Nanaimo electors have entrusted me on 2 occasions with the responsibility to make decisions on their behalf, and I've always done so solely with the best interests in mind, their best interest, and with a clear conscience. Nevertheless, to ensure that not even a shadow of doubt is cast over the legitimacy of DVP 156, I will hereby absent myself from council chambers while council reconsiders this item.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The DVP 156, it's requested the council hear anyone wishing to speak with respect to DVP 156. Staff recommendation that council pass a motion that has the effect of implementing one of the following three courses of action in relation to the development variance permit number DVP 156 for the property located at number 25779 Turner Road, doing business as Boston Pizza. 1, reaffirm the issuance of the development variance permit, or 2, reject the development variance permit application, or 3, grant some but not all of the variances requested.
I move recommendation number 1.
Second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
Excuse me, Your Worship.
Yes.
At the very beginning of this particular item, there's an opportunity to hear anyone who's wishing to speak with respect to DVP 156.
Okay.
And I just wanted to confirm that whether or not there were any that did wish to speak.
Okay, and you're in a concurrence and withdrawing it then? Okay. Councillor Sherry, did you want to make a comment? No. Okay. So is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters related to the DVP 156 at 25779 Turner Road? Come forward, sir. We just need your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Peter Jorfy. I'm at 633 Hillcrest Street in Nanaimo. I just wish to speak in favor of this particular variance request. I think that this is an issue that has gotten a little bit of a life of its own. I think there's a lot of opinions that are getting bantered around about something that is really a relatively minor thing. You're looking at a sign that is designed to draw attention to an anchor tenant of a plaza that will only benefit from additional traffic, a sign that is not ostentatious or in any way distracting or anything to the traffic pattern or anything else. I think that we have a restaurant here that has made a significant turnaround. It's the kind of investment we would like to see more of in this community. A restaurant that has gone through prior ownership and now has a new owner who is committed to the community. The people in the restaurant and the ancillary services who work with it number in the hundreds that benefit from this. And I think that this is the sort of thing that we need to make sure we don't send a message that would dissuade anybody else from coming to town and doing something similar. If you look at even something as simple as the hotel next door, I think that the way that council handles this particular issue will have an impact that is seen by other people who are making a decision of should they invest in Nanaimo or not. I think that there are probably myself and many others who are impacted by this decision in a way, and I think that those would number well into the hundreds. This is a restaurant that touches a lot of people, whether it's direct employment or other services that work through there. And I just wanted to make sure that council was aware that this is this exact kind of issue that many voters in Nanaimo are extremely concerned about, and that a couple hundred votes difference one way or the other has made quite a difference in the makeup of this council in the past, and I'm quite sure it would in the future.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, council members. I've spoke here before.
We just need your name and address for the file, please.
My name is Jim Mercier, and number 25779 Turner Road. My wife and I and my son moved here in August of 2009 to open up the Boston Pizza restaurant and reestablish that location. Prior to entering to a leasing agreement, both the landlord, First Capital, and the Boston Pizza identified that there were significant design flaws with the existing signage location at the Longwood Station. The existing signage along Highway 19 is poorly identifiable and substantially obscured by the geographical terrain. During the summer months, the situation worsens with overgrown vegetation, and during the winter months, the signage cannot be properly viewed from any distance and offers no value to any of the current tenants, not only myself, but all of the tenants within the complex. City staff themselves have recognized the substantial issues regarding the poor visibility and the improper signage at this particular location. I first approached the city to discuss the signage concerns in the fall of 2009. At that time, we were advised by staff that the LED topic was in for review and advised the process would be completed in the next couple of months. I need not remind anybody here that staff has been working on this issue since 2006. After 9 months of continued delays, I was unable to effectively grow the business in a manner that we thought was appropriate. I approached staff once again regarding the concerns pertaining to the signage. Staff advised at that time that if I acted as an agent for First Capital, the landowner, I would qualify to apply for signage of up to 45 feet in height. And I would qualify for signage up to 320 square feet based on the mall's square footage. Staff further advised that a variance would be required in order to add a second sign along Highway number 19A. And I'd require a variant for the LED application, as the bylaws still hadn't been approved. I submitted my request for a variance in September. With respect to the LED component of our sign, staff instructed the First Capital be advised that should we be awarded this variant, that there would be no more LED signs permitted at the Longwood Station. I complied with that direction, and First Capital agreed and signed off on this decision. On the 13th of September, this variant went before Council. Councilmember Kipp was absent. However, our variance request was passed on a vote of 6-2 in favour. Public council took place with minor objections reported on October 4th. At that council meeting, the sign was approved with a vote of 5-4, even though Councillor Oldham and Councillor Kipp's votes changed their votes in a manner that was different from what they had earlier indicated. 3 days following the vote, I received confirmation from city planners, David Stewart, advising that our permits were in the Legislative Services branches awaiting signatures and would be along shortly. The correspondence read as follows. Please be advised that the Council of the City of Nanaimo, during its regular meeting held on October 4, 2010, approved the issuance of development permit variance for the above-mentioned location. The documentation will be forwarded to the Legislative Services Department for appropriate signatures, and a signed copy of the permit will be forwarded to you in due course. Signed, David Stewart, City Planner, Current Planning Section Committee, Safety and Development. Upon the strength of this correspondence, I moved forward and requisitioned the approved signage, signed contracts and commitments, and provided a substantial deposit. Now I stand here before you once again to put forth our argument in support of the proper signage along the Nanaimo commercial corridor. And I emphasize commercial corridor, a designation this council has provided to that area. Let me start by referring to the municipal process at hand. Boston Pizza put forth a valid application, which passed a first, a second, and a third reading. We then received correspondence from David Stewart advising that the documents will be forwarded to the Legislative Services for appropriate signatures, and a signed copy will be forwarded to us in due course. Not might be, not could be, won't be reviewed, that they will be forwarded to us. Honourable Council members, it will be my argument that this very correspondence from the Nanaimo Safety and Development Department is deemed to be viewed or defined as, quote, acting upon a manner, as detailed in Nanaimo's own bylaws, 7060, which guides council members on how to conduct business. And I refer to city business when I say that. In section 33.1 of the bylaws, it states, a motion, resolution, which was adopted or defeated may be reconsidered by council provided that the resolution has not the assent of the electors, firstly, has not been reconsidered under section or sections 131 of the Community Charter, and most importantly, the final point, has not been acted upon by any officer, servant, or agent of the municipality. Our solicitors and I, both, have questioned the City of Nanaimo administration, council members, and the legal department unsuccessfully with respect to Section 31 or 33.1, and the response from all parties has been a resounding air of silence. Council members, this is a sign. It's just a sign. I came to Nanaimo to be closer to my family and to reestablish a promising business venture. In doing so, I carefully looked at the community. I saw what I believe to be an exciting, progressive city. I saw downtown revitalization well underway. I saw a building, which I then learned was part of a $72 million investment into revitalization efforts. This very building we stand in here right now. I also saw the difficulties of the business that was established there previously, and the Longwood Station complex and the experiences they had with respect to quality signage and exposure. I tried to listen carefully to the councillors' members' concerns relative to this sign. The Boston Pizza sign itself does not seem to be an issue. Councillors voted in favour 7-1 in September. The height does seem to be a cause of some challenges to both council members Johnson and Sherry. To them, I would offer to rescind my request for a 50-foot variance and offer a reduced height to allow the bylaw height to a limit of 45 feet, which is the allowable height within the bylaws. With respect to the LED signage, I contend that it will play a major role in the marketing activities of this particular complex, and that this format of signage is second to none when promoting business, special events, community events, local activities, amber alerts, even weather conditions. I've heard concerns expressed by Councilmember Padgett with respect to his personal views pertaining to visual pollution and clutter. To that end, Mr. Padgett, I would offer to remove the equivalent amount of signage from the exterior of our building that's currently in place. I once heard from a council member here make claim that 65% of the city's income is derived from business taxes. I ask you, without substantial local business, what part of the public tax base will be picked up in the shortfalls if we don't support business within this community? Signage and the ability to market one's wares have been part of life for thousands of years. The very concept of signage has grown and evolved throughout time. Nanaimo is a progressive and vibrant city, and it too will continue to move forward in a progressive direction, regardless of the efforts of those who wish to make time stand still. Proper signage benefits every business owner within this complex and Nanaimo. As a group of businesses, we support and complement each other. Our continued success in turn supports our employees. Our employees' income enriches and supports this community. A successful community is able to sustain and support local business. And from there, the cycle repeats itself. This is part of being about a sustainable community. This is not about being trivial or intolerant. I brought my family here. We've picked up, we've moved roots, we've established ourselves here. This is an incredible community, and it is our intention to stay here. I've come to this council for support, to support the business, the Longwood Station, the tenants in the Longwood Station, and the employees. And I think council has a responsibility to do the right thing here and today. Thank you.
Before you go, we've got a couple of, we've got some questions for you. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Good evening, Mr. Mercier. Since it was my motion that took the bylaw, the proposed bylaw, that is to deal with LED signage and electronic billboards back to staff, that was done for a very specific reason. And as you talk about business and sustainability, to this council, who have to look at every corner of this municipality, sustainability also has something to do with how we live with others and how we deal with some of the ideas that senior government have. My concern at that point, and it is unchanged, I have to tell you, has to do with safety. And I want to read to you out of the information paper of the British Columbia government's Department of Transportation and Infrastructure with regards to electronic billboards. It's dated September the 30th, 2009.
Can you clarify the source of that once more time before we start?
That is called the Information Paper on Electronic Billboards, issued by the government of British Columbia.
This is an information paper?
It's an information paper.
And what weight does the information, before we proceed, I just want to establish the grounds that this information holds.
It is information that people like you, people like me, people on the street, people in government, please let me finish, have to take into consideration.
Okay, so this is an information package, holds no government weight, no authority, no regulations. This is what you're referring to. I would like to hear it.
That certainly holds a lot of moral.
Okay, so we're talking moral grounds, but we're not talking law and legislation.
Let me finish the moral thing then without getting interrupted. And it states that the cognitive demands of drivers are greatest at locations where they must make decisions or actions such as merging onto a freeway, changing routes, or negotiating a tight curve. Distracting stimuli such as electronic billboards should not be placed near these areas. Major traffic signs are considered to be any warning guide or regulatory sign or any changeable message sign. Driver decision and action points include merge areas, any intersection with a public road, on-ramps, off-ramps, interchanges, signed curves, and railway crossing. Then it goes on to say, where it pertains to your particular location, that for highways where the speed limit is 80 kilometers or greater, which happens to be the case on Highway 19A and Turner Road, an electronic billboard should not be within A, 250 meters of a major traffic sign, 500 meters of a driving decision or acting point, that being a point where someone has to decide whether she or he turns left, right, takes an on or an off ramp. These are safety regulations that I want to be considered as part of a bylaw on electronic billboards. Okay. That bylaw, is not there yet. These kind of geographic areas are of immense concern, and whether it is an information paper or whether it's the law of the province really makes no difference. These are sensible suggestions that we have to find accommodations for. And so no matter what else I can say to you, I know you're going to lump this at me as being anti-business or anti-small business. Nothing could be further of the truth. But if I have to choose between Boston Pizza on 19A and Turner Road or the safety of the driving public, then I know what my moral obligation is. And I will not be able to support your request for a variance. Other than, I would be willing to give you your freestanding sign, but I wouldn't go higher than 30 feet, and I will not have LED signage as part of that, because we don't have the bylaw, and exactly for the very valid reasons that I'm just reading off to you. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, I respect what your comments, and those are fine comments that the beginning report had established. I did read the same report prior to coming here, and I had the opportunity to oversee some corresponding emails back and forth with respect to that report. That report focused particularly on the word and emphasized on the word billboards. This is not defined as a billboard, as that report writes upon. that is designed for billboards, as we indicate on the road towards the news, and that size of signage is what that report was dedicated and focused towards, not towards a 100-square-foot sign. Thank you.
Well, as a follow-up to Your Worship, I don't agree with that at all, because we have correspondence where the ministry actually refers to it as LED. So
I think that correspondence will be answered to in a few minutes.
Well, the whole point being is that if you cannot see that we should have a legitimate concern about the safety, never mind whether we like LED signage or not, then I don't know what else I can tell you. That is a legitimate concern, and I intend to deal with it in a responsible way by way of a bylaw that at some point next year, in the beginning, January or February, we'll have on the books, and then we'll see what we can do with them.
I find it frustrating often, Mr. Paggi, when solid arguments can't be found and the issue of safety is brought up. I mean, the safety issue has not been ever established that there is a danger or inherent danger in any of these manners whatsoever. It's pure speculation that there is a concern of safety. We have a sign established outside of this conference center on 19A, well larger than what Boston Pizza is asking for. I've not seen carnage. I've not seen accidents. I've not seen safety concerns. And Mr. Paggi, you yourself have never brought up safety concerns regarding the LED component outside of this very conference center here.
It is exactly the reason, Mr. Mercier, that we sent this bylaw back to staff in order to incorporate this, because some of us feel that it is extremely important that we have this component in there. And this component was totally missing in the proposed bylaw as it was sent to us. And that simply is not good enough. And, you say there's no consequences. I'll read you of the same report one more little bit. There is now considerable research concluding that electronic billboards are distracting to a degree that they may be unsafe. I mean, it's in there. So we have to deal with it one way or the other, and that's a legitimate business of municipal governments.
Okay, we do need to move along. Councillor Johnstone.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a question to Mr. Mercier, if I may. Should tonight the vote go in favor of your sign, would you absolutely guarantee that there would be no third-party advertising on that sign, that it would only be for not-for-profits and community events?
I can only guarantee that while I own the sign.
Oh, to guarantee which? I'm sorry?
I can only guarantee that while I own the sign.
Oh.
Okay. That's a question I want to hear further. I want to hear other people, other delegations before I make any more statements, Your Worship.
Okay. Councillor Sherry.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mercier, when you made your application for the signage, and when you appeared before the council at the last time that this was a 5-3 or 5-4 vote, you indicated that your establishment was the only Canadian franchise that didn't have a sign.
As a standalone restaurant?
Yes.
As far as my understanding, that's correct.
Well, I'm sure glad I got grandchildren, because they can tell me how the hell to use Google and go on to Google Earth and find out.
I think...
because if I may, I have the floor here, and I'm rebuffing your comment that it's your understanding that you're the only one. Okay. I went in to Google and I put Boston Pizza. He gave me all the stores and that were in BC, and I have visited over 30 sites. And with the beauty, especially after a grandchild, shows you how you can go walk around that whole building on Google Earth to have a complete view of the restaurant. Okay? On Vancouver Island, I think there's 3 stores that have not only the sign, but what I would call the billboard capabilities. All I have to do is go to Port Alberni, look under Port Alberni, there's no signage there. On Vancouver Island, Hillside in Victoria, Langford, Saanich, On the mainland, the Grandview Highway, Marine Drive, Kingsway, Richmond, Stevenson Highway, Millardville, Queensboro, Burnaby, Nordell, Delta, Coquitlam, Newton, Pitt Meadows, and Cloverdale. All do not have signage. We got the signage on the sides of the building, the very same that you have on the front of your building. Okay? Now, White Rock, they got a small 6 to 8 foot sign. Even the head office in Vancouver has what I would call a 4 foot sign on their front lawn. They wouldn't have to have the bigger one because that's the administration. Okay? Parksville has signage, Duncan has signage, Campbell River has signage, Broadway, Vancouver have signage and street sign. And what you were asking, in my opinion, is to go from no signage to the leader of the parade, because none of these signs appeared to be 50 foot tall, and none of them happen to be LED. If you wanted to change a message up there, you need the old stick with your tack-on letters going there. Okay?
Okay.
That's okay. That's how your corporation that you want to be a member of does. Okay? The problem that I have, and I would be prepared to support a sign, but the signage would be the standard Boston Pete's one, like they have in Parksville, or they have in Duncan, which is around 30 foot, not 45, not 50 foot high. And I can't support giving a variant for a portion of a bylaw that we don't even have in existence yet. So how can we vary as it relates to LEDs when we don't have a bylaw pertaining to LEDs? Because, and you answered Councillor Johnson's question really well. As long as you're not the owner, you're not going to permit third party. Well, to me, when you start adding any of these other things onto the signage, then you are into third party. So, as I say, I'm prepared to give you a sign, but it's no LED, and it's limited to the 30 feet that is pertained in the bylaw. Now, you say, well, you're allowed 45 feet. Okay, if you can go to First Capital and have them remove the current sign that they have there now, and go to the 50 feet, or the 45 feet as pertained there, and posted all the tenants within that complex on there. Because I just noticed that in some of these other complexes that do have signs, that they have a sign pertaining to the shopping mall or whatever, and some of those establishments have the Boston Pizza in their list of tenants. So, but there's one thing that blew my mind away. Boston Pizza must be a very green corporation, because each one that I looked at, the majority of them had lots of green shrubbery and trees around.
Okay. Well, I can't speak to all of the stores that you were able to Google on your grandson's Google.
He never did it, I did it.
I can attest to the fact that you are in there on a number of the stores. Port Alberni being the first one that I'll mention. I was there earlier last week. I did take pictures of the signage there. Intimately familiar with the particular sign that's there, and it is a standalone sign. With respect to the 45-foot variance, I will speak to that in the sense that First Capital does have the right to request a variance for signage up to 45 feet. The variance request is not for the 45-foot because the bylaws within the City of Nanaimo allow for a second sign of 45 feet. The variance request is for a second sign on 19A. In my statement earlier, I'd like to rescind.
This one says, sorry, but could we get staff confirm that on that? It's my understanding. Mr. Tucker, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, the 45 feet is for a multi-tenanted shopping center, and Longwood already has their sign on that particular frontage, and that's why the variance request is for a second sign on that particular frontage.
Okay. Thank you.
With respect to the multi-tenant advertising, and my comment to Mrs. Johnson being that as long as I own the sign, I will have only Boston Pizza advertising on there. In regards to that, the only other person that can own the sign would be the Longwood Station, the landlord of that complex himself. So after the landlord owns that, I can't speak to any multi-tenant advertising.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I see no further questions. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to matters? Come down, sir. Sorry? Yeah. Sir? Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, Honorable Mayor, Councillors, my name is Barry Liddell, and my address is 5775 Turner Road. I have been the principal operator of the Longwood Brew Pub and Restaurant for 11 years, and I'm here to voice my opposition to Development Permit 156. I would like to resubmit to the Council a document of opposition signed by 9 long-term tenants of the Longwood Station. May I distribute that?
Not to here, but to staff, please.
Thank you. This document originally came to the Council via fax several weeks ago for your consideration. I bring it to you again in light of several events that have taken place in recent weeks. We respectfully submit that we have no hidden agenda, nor do we wish any ill will towards Mr. Mercier nor his staff at Boston Pizza. But we cannot support the LED component of this sign design. We feel collectively that we are British Columbia's most livable city because we care about excessive sign pollution. We care about our city's appearance and pray that we never live in a neighborhood that is barren of nature and filled with endless LED market screens dotting our roadways. Please do not label us as not supporting modern technology. We feel that there is, though, a place and a time for this kind of signage. Yes, in the ferry depot. Yes, on the theaters. Yes, in places where people are predominantly static and not driving 80+ kilometers an hour while trying to focus on the intersection light ahead, traffic, and pedestrians. Mr. Mercier has actively campaigned the merchants of Longwood Station for their support of this application for the Development Permit 156 with a promise that when it was built, that he would sell the sign to First Capital Management Systems. And at this time, First Capital Management will offer tenants the opportunity to purchase advertising time on the LED sign component. He proposed this to all the merchants. I can only assume that they will charge market rates for this advertising time, and I respectfully submit that in this economic climate that we work in, most of us will not be able to afford this rather expensive form of advertising, which will leave the lion's share of time to be used by Boston Pizza. Because I can tell you that Mr. Mercier is a very astute businessman. And I cannot see him spending $250,000 on a sign, then selling it for $1 and still having to pay for advertising on that same sign. I think not. I thank your Honourable Mayor and Councillors for giving me the time to speak and pray that you embrace the ideals that the British Columbia's most livable city represents. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I see no questions. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard? Welcome, sir. We just need the name and address.
Yes, my name is Bill McKay. I'm at 2575 McCullough Road. What I wanted to, I've got a PowerPoint presentation here, just waiting for Cam to bring up. Is there a way of getting the house lights down just a wee bit? Okay, Cam. What I hoped to do tonight was the other issues relative to height and content and so on, those have all been dealt with. What I was hoping to deal with tonight was the very confusing position that the Ministry of Transportation and Highways has presented in their discussions. Back in 2009, there was correspondence that went out from the city to Debbie O'Brien of the Ministry of Transportation and Highways requesting comments for an upcoming open house that was going to be concerning LED and animated signs. She forwarded that request on to Mr. Dave Edgar. Mr. Edgar sent a letter to Ms. Jennifer Hardy of the engineering branch for further comment. Her comments included, and this was prior to the open house in 2009, quote, "We do not have any official policy on the use of large animated video screens/billboards. There is a concern that these signs, especially those with consistently changing animation or those that do not have dimming ability, could prove a distraction to drivers and ultimately lead to increased collisions." She goes on to say, however, it's difficult to determine any direct correlation between these signs and an increase in collisions. As far as I'm aware, there haven't been any studies done that explore the connection between animated signs, driver distractions, and collisions. The proposed Nanaimo bylaw on LED signs specifically defines animation as the changing of colors or the screen so as to create the impression of movement. That will not be permitted under the proposed bylaw. Automatic dimming is required and no full motion is permitted. Now, Mr. Edgar, if you recall back at the beginning there, Ms. O'Brien referred it to Mr. Edgar. He did say in his correspondence, however, other than not allowing them in our right-of-way, our ministry does not have a policy on their use outside of our right-of-way. By the following slides, one could or would have to conclude otherwise. We all know this sign. There's two of them, one at either end of Nanaimo. LED signage to warn of traffic delays at the two ferry terminals. LED signage on their right-of-way. These types of signs are used consistently by the Ministry of Transportation and Highways and their contractors. These signs are multifaceted. They either scroll or they quickly change messages. This one happens to have 4 separate messages at a change rate of about 2 seconds per change. And of course, we're all familiar with these. The community itself and Speedwatch uses these signs. Again, LED technology. Now, on September 10th, Ms. O'Brien, at the request of the City of Nanaimo, relative to this variance application, she submitted the following. The Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure is not supportive of this type of signage adjacent to our highways, as there's evidence that these types of signs are an unsafe distraction to drivers. This statement caused the referral of the LED sign bylaw back to staff for further review in October of 2010. So I commenced correspondence with Ms. O'Brien concerning her comments to the City of Nanaimo in an effort to gain some information and clarification of 1, backup studies and statistics, 2, policy, and 3, enforcement. Some of the questions I asked her. First of all, do you have any statistical data relative to accidents at the approaches to the Ironworkers Memorial Bridge in North Vancouver, where there's a large billboard installed on the approaches to the bridge? Her answer was no. I then said, do you have any statistical data relative to the accidents in the vicinity of any of the LED signs on Vancouver Island, in particular the Thrifty Foods sign in Duncan, which is the sign that is most often compared to in this application? And her answer was no. So I asked for further clarification. Is there a foreign policy that has been developed since May of 2009? And her answer was the ministry has no written policy on the use of LED signage. Headquarters staff have been investigating the use of these devices. How will you enforce the regulations? Her answer, since we don't have an endorsed strategy in place, we don't have any policy that we can hand over that gives a definitive no. We can't except within our right-of-way. I asked the question. Ministry has consistently uses references to billboards. In my opinion, the Boston Pizza sign is not considered to be a billboard. Boston Pizza sign will be 45 feet in the air above the roadway grade. So it won't be one of these in-your-face things. Question 1, is there a distinction between LED signs and billboards? Question 2, do you consider this sign at 5779 Turner Road to be a billboard sign as defined by your proposed regulations? Her answers were, the term billboard refers to any LED sign / video display signage, etc., regardless of the size of the sign. This type of signage is considered to be driver distraction regardless of the height of the sign. Therefore, as she goes on to say, as the sign you and your client proposed adjacent to Island Highway number 19A at Turner Road would be no larger than 100 square meters, and I'm sure that we need to correct her that it's 100 square feet in size, it should not be considered to be a billboard sign. This is where it gets confusing. She goes on to say in the same sentence, to clarify, when our draft policy states the term billboard, it is referring to any type of LED signage, video display signage, etc., regardless of the size of the sign. We would consider this to be a billboard, as I'm sure the Ministry of Transportation and Highways does. But according to her definition, this is also a billboard. That's also a billboard. According to her definition, she said any size. This is also a billboard, the proposed Boston Pizza sign. So now they have additional concerns that Councillor Patchy brought up earlier. Where the speed is less than 80 kilometers an hour, an electronic billboard should not be within 120 meters of a major traffic sign or driver decision / action point. The sign on the end of the VICC here is 25 meters from a crosswalk and 50 meters from the Commercial Avenue intersection. They go on to say at 80 kilometers an hour, that distance increases to 250 meters. So that means it should be not within 250 meters. To follow the parameters of the MOT with the 250-meter distance, 2 signs would be required to advertise the Boston Pizza location. Or a second option to get it 250 meters away from the intersection would be to put it up at Uplands Drive. Both options are absolutely impractical. Those 2 locations there would be where the signs would have to be in order to meet within those parameters. Additional signs. MOT recommends that multiple electronic billboards competing for drivers' attention not be placed in close proximity. Longwood Station is only permitted 1 LED sign as dictated by the proposed bylaw, so there will not be clutter at that location. In my opinion, LED signage can permit businesses to reduce the number of signs at a particular location because LED will allow all tenants to have pylon signage without having a multitude of signage on board the same sign. Which one of the following signs do you believe is more visually appealing? Which one do you believe requires more concentration, and which one takes longer to digest the information portrayed? There are 7 signs on the Nanaimo North Town Centre sign that could easily be accommodated on an LED message board, such as what's on the Boston Pizza sign, and that gives you an idea of their height comparison. In closing, I leave you with a final slide that represents what we have today and what we can do to improve signage in our community utilizing LED technology. I believe this example may well describe what Councillor Patchy refers to as visual pollution. And there's no disrespect intended to the tenants of the mall of the sign you're about to see. It's what they've had to resort to get their businesses known. And I leave you with this, and thank you for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. I see no questions. Thank you very much.
A question.
Oh, do you have a question?
Yes.
Okay, we do have a question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, so you were involved when we were looking at this LED sign issue a year or two ago, Mr. McKay, and I thank you for the research that you've done here and the research that you did for that committee as well.
Thank you.
Some of the information there when the MOT representative was responding to you said, and your client. So you are in the sign business yourself, and you, in fact, are Boston Pizza would be your client on this sign, right?
Can I ask the relevancy of the question?
It's just for the sake of transparency.
Certainly. Mr. Mercier is our client, yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Now, there's been several references to, and you've made the reference to the LED sign on this building, but what is the speed limit going past there?
Past Boston Pizza?
No, past this building.
50K.
Yeah, so it's quite different, isn't it?
It is quite different, but it falls far short of the recommendations of Transportation and Highways, as they've recommended. They say 120 meters.
Okay, but it is a different situation. I'm just saying it's not particularly comparable. The other thing is, when you suggest that the sign for Longwood Station, or any of the malls in our community, could have a single LED sign as opposed to a listing of signs, the signs that would advertise each of the tenants in that mall would, of course, come sequentially, right?
Correct.
So that you'd only be able to see one at a time, especially if you're passing by at 70 or 80K.
Or if you're stopped at the stoplight for 3 to 4 minutes, I think you'd see them many times over.
Yes. So I just wanted to share with you this experience that I've had watching the one at the Chawasan Mall. It sits at the corner of 56th and Boundary Bay Road, and I often am over there because my mother lives there. And it attempts to advertise several of the businesses, maybe a dozen or so, in the mall that is on both sides of the 56th there in Chawasan. I stood there as a pedestrian. Every once in a while, very quickly, the sign would change from one tenant to another. You'd get the name of the tenant, you'd get maybe an image of what they were selling, and then you'd get a phone number. Now, it came far too fast to write down the phone number, and besides, the facility's right there. So I just need to ask you, I mean, how is it that LED signs are able to attract business in a knowledgeable way for the person watching, for the observer, if they do that kind of fast sequencing of the businesses that they're trying to advertise?
Well, from the research I've done, I would suggest that's a very poorly managed sign. Was that a monochrome, single color track? Was it scrolling or was it rolling the messages?
It was flashing. I mean, one would come on, and then another one would come on.
Yes.
It's hard to. I couldn't see what the break was.
One of the suggestions that's been made relative to these signs is that even though they're very expensive now, that they would come down significantly in cost over time as they became more popular. In our business, in conventional signage with plastics and vinyl and so on, that we'd make a conventional sign off. Those, notwithstanding the fact that there's been significantly, more signs built over the years, and as business grows and as the world grows, those products continue to go up, not down, notwithstanding additional volume. But an important part of these signs is the fact that if they're poorly managed, they will be ineffective. And part of the cost of managing a sign such as this is the daily management. It's my understanding that Thrifty's in Duncan, they have 2 people who work part-time on just managing that sign. So there's far more to it than just the capital cost. There's also the day-to-day management of the sign, and it's not cheap.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Pachi.
Thank you, Worship. Good evening, Mr. McKay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to remind you that the last correspondence that we have from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure with regards to electronic signage, and where they talk about LED and not billboards, was dated October the 27th, 2010, and you know what the restrictions are that are in there. So I just want that on the record. The other thing I want to ask you, I do remember the last time that you appeared before this council, you made reference to the fact that there was no research that showed that LED, electronic signage, if you wish, had any effect whatsoever on traffic accidents. Do you remember saying that?
I believe what I said was that the ministry in that letter that caused the referral of the LED bylaw contained no backup and no research.
So the next day, after third reading was stopped and the thing was sent back, in this discussion paper, this electronic billboard correspondence that we got, I just want to read 2 paragraphs to you, if I may, Your Worship. There's now considerable research concluding that electronic billboards are distracting to a degree that may be unsafe. In addition, research recommendations and guidelines from various jurisdictions on the use of electronic billboards are relatively consistent. The recent NCHRP report provides a comprehensive evaluation of existing research and guidelines to provide guidance on the safety implications of electronic billboards. And although research reports sponsored by the outdoor advertising industry often conclude electronic billboards do not adversely affect safety, conclusions reached in government or insurance company-sponsored studies regularly demonstrate that electronic billboards adversely affect safe driving performance. I'd just like your reaction.
It sounds a little bit like the, again, there was no report attached to the correspondence. Signs can be, these electronic signs can be managed poorly. They can be extremely distracting, or they can draw attention to themselves. LED is used very effectively for good public safety on highways, where they're trying to warn of construction delays, where they're trying to warn of ferry lineups, where they're trying to advise you of your speed. The fact that as you approach a posted sign that's giving your speed, and it starts flashing extremely rapidly to try and get your attention, I'm not for 1 second suggesting that that would be the same method that you would use to hawk hamburgers or some other product. No, absolutely not. And I think a compliment to the groups that have been involved with this project from the beginning. They have been very careful about trying to eliminate a lot of those issues, including full motion and not allowing it. Careful about the length of time that these things change and their change rates, and so not as to cause that type of thing. As you can see with my slides relative to some of the shopping centers that we have here, I think it's a way, and something near and dear to you, is the visual clutter. They can aid significantly in reducing that visual clutter. And as far as managing them is concerned, if they're managed properly and with good guidelines, which I believe are already in place, ready to go, ready to push the button in January, I think that that should not be an issue.
If I may have one follow-up, Your Worship. Are you saying to us then that we should not be concerned at all about the safety issues that we are confronted with?
I think the 2 choices that we're looking at here today is if we have concerns about public safety, that we're going to ban them completely. I believe that if they're managed properly with the good guidelines that are in place in the proposed bylaw, there should not be public safety issues. I mean, as we've seen outside this building, notwithstanding the fact it's a 50-kilometer-an-hour speed zone, there's a lot of things that are vying for your attention as you're driving down Nickel Street and onto Terminal Avenue. And I don't think we've seen a tremendous rash of incidents relative to this intersection, notwithstanding the fact it doesn't meet their proposed guidelines.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. You don't have. We have no further questions. Thank you, sir. Now, was there anyone else that would like to be heard concerning the matters at number 5779 Turner Road? Welcome, sir. I just need your name and
Worthy
address.
Mayor, Councilman, I'm Tom Weber. I'm a resident of Nanaimo. I lived most of my life in Courtenay. But I was sideswiped by 2.5 years ago down by Terminal for somebody trying to read the stationary sign. So I can't see the difference between this and that, because if it takes people concentrating to read 9 or 10 signs on a strip, it's no different than the LCD. Believe me, I was sideswiped there because somebody was reading the sign. And I'd just like to say that I think it's just throwing red herrings out to say the LCD is worse than the others, because I've never been hit when I've been going by an LCD sign. Thank you.
My name is Fred Taylor, 404 Emery Way. I speak not to the application for a development variance permit for a sign, but to the lack of example exercised by the city and what appears a lack of recognition of adopted bylaw. Yes, the issue has been referred to the Ministry of Transportation with unofficial, unendorsed policies in reply. I understand the policies awaiting the Ministry's executive direction are well worth consideration. But just a minute. The city has demonstrated and opened the door for others to erect such signs. I refer to the LED sign on the conference center facing Trans-Canada Highway number 1, Turnbull Avenue, Nickel Street, without even referral to the ministry. No referral. I also question one of the most important points in the ministry to consider. Could constitute a nuisance or distraction, especially within distance of a major traffic sign or driver decision action point. Consider a much higher use of Trans-Canada Highway number 1 versus secondary Highway 19A. Consider a much higher use of pedestrian crosswalk within a very short distance of the conference center LED sign versus next to nothing at the intersection of Turner Road and Highway 19, a secondary highway. Also consider the Vancouver Island Highway sign is almost at eye level to distract you, where a sign 50 feet up in the air at an intersection, you'd have to have sunroofs to see it way up in the air. Finally, I believe the Council has an obligation to recognize its own adopted bylaws. I'll get number 1, please. This is your council procedure bylaw, and the last part, which other people have spoken to, is and has not been acted upon by an officer agent of the municipality. You can reconsider. Next one, please. But here's the letter that went out a couple of days later saying it's a go. I'd say your reconsideration is out of order according to your bylaws. I think council needs to consider that. In a later date, you need to consider correcting your bylaw to give you authority to reconsider without staff intervention. And I think you need to consider, if you are concerned, an LED sign that you have close to main distraction points of traffic lights, heavily used pedestrian traffic, etc., because it's all referred to by speed, etc., in the ministry letter, which is some recommendations. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Bobby Buckle, 2370 Godfrey Road. My name is Bobby Buckle. I'm the owner of Elite Gaming Entertainment. I'm here to voice my support in favor of Jim Mercier and Boston Pizza. I want to let you know that your decision has far more reaching consequences than just Boston Pizza. The additional signage that's been applied for by Jim Mercier, if he has it denied, he's slating to close the Boston Pizza. This would affect 60 jobs in Nanaimo, but besides that, there's businesses that'll be affected, including mine, and 2 free poker pub leagues that play at Boston Pizza. My business provides casino nights at Boston Pizza. I've done 2 of them already this year. It's our pilot project this year, so that when Jim and Boston Pizza offer pizza nights for businesses at a lower cost than they can get at a hotel or somewhere else, I come in and provide the entertainment afterwards. So my employees will be affected, as well as the 60 employees at Boston Pizza and the 2 owners of the poker leagues that play there, of which I'm also a subcontractor of one of them. So by you denying the signage that you've already approved, having Jim being forced to close the restaurant because he's lost $160,000 to $250,000 on this sign is not just going to affect his business, it's going to affect my business, Peter's business, who's right back there, and another friend of mine named Doug. So there's far-reaching consequences to reversing your decision than just Jim and just his 60 employees. I have 20 employees that work for me. So you can take that total and make it 80. Like, it's far more reaching than you probably realize, as well as the people that enjoy going to Boston Pizza, the Nanaimo Clippers fans that go there on Friday and Saturday nights to have fun and meet with the Clippers, which fosters good community relationship between the team and the fans, which of course they spend money at the city facilities, buying tickets to the game, everything else. So I just wanted to let you know that it's not just Jim and his 60 employees that are affected. Me and 20 of my employees are affected, and 2 owners of the poker pub leagues in Nanaimo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor. My name is Patrick Farrell. I live at 216 9th Street in New Westminster. I am the Director of Operations for Boston Pizza for Western Canada, and I have come here today to speak in support of Jim and Billy Mercier in their petition to get this sign for their Boston Pizza. I guess what I want to offer you today is just our perspective on our franchisees, where we feel that we're very fortunate to have them as owners of this Boston Pizza. As you know, this location had a troubled past. It did close in bankruptcy prior to the Merciers taking it over. We have 2 measurements, really, at Boston Pizza measuring operational standards, and they are our business review, which is conducted twice a year by our field service managers who roam across Western Canada, and also we have a guest service measurement tool, which is an in-house survey that guests can take. I can tell you that in regards to both these measurements of operational standards, that the Mercier store is among the highest in the region. In fact, and I was telling Jim this just prior to our meeting today, I frequently use this Nanaimo store's operations as a case study for good operations as I travel across Western Canada, and I advise other franchisees on how to be successful. Right from the beginning, when Jim and Billy landed in Nanaimo and had a look at the store and had a look at the town and decided they wanted to uproot from Alberta and plant new roots here, Jim exceeded our expectations in terms of investment in every way you can imagine. I think the most impressive way that they exceeded that expectation of investment was in their people. If you do a head count of how many staff were at the Boston Pizza under the old ownership, and you count how many are there now, 60 employees is actually more than you probably need to run a Boston Pizza. Jim spends more on training and development than most Boston Pizzas spend in the stores that I see, 185 some stores across Western Canada. So I can just tell you that as franchisees, we're lucky to have them here. I think as members of the community, you're lucky to have them here. I think they've invested in the community. As they say, they have created jobs. They treat their staff very well. I think their staff have shown their support, and staff don't always have to show their support for what owners do, but I think Jim and Billy's staff have, because they do care about the business, and they do care and recognize that as owners that Jim and Billy have gone above and beyond. So I'd just like to say that I'm not an expert on signage. I know there's a lot of factors here, and you have to make an important decision that affects not just this business but also your community. But I will say this, that Boston Pizzas in general, generally speaking, across Western Canada, that from my experience, do require adequate signage. And we have long identified this as a big opportunity, that as you come up the highway, it's very difficult to see this location. So we do believe that some type of signage needs to happen at the store for it to be more successful. I think that this couple has invested a lot of money, not only in the store but in your community, and I think that they deserve an opportunity to have that. So.
Okay, sir, I've got a couple of questions. Yes. Councillor Kipp.
Well, you do a core service review every year?
We do what, sorry?
Core service review every year?
We do 2 of them for every store in Canada.
Appreciate that. That was my question.
Yeah.
Council Oldham.
I think that question was directed more at the council. But, so did I understand you correctly that this is a successful franchise and that you use it as a model of success for other franchises?
From an operational standpoint.
Okay.
In terms of how well they service guests and how they look after their business, yes.
Okay. Can you say anything about its success otherwise, overall?
You mean in what regard? Profitability?
Yes.
No, you'd have to speak to, as a franchisor, we don't own the business, we're not partner in the business, so we're not privy to the P&L statements that the store
Okay,
has.
I'm glad I'd asked then, because you left that impression with me then.
Yeah, we as a franchisor, Jim and Billy essentially lease the brand Boston Pizza from us, and have access to our systems and our menu and our expertise, but we don't share in profits.
Okay, one more question, sir. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you. Good evening.
Yes, good evening.
I just noticed a few sentences back you said some type of signage is required, some type of signage. Now, some of us here are quite willing to go part way, which is to authorize the erection of a freestanding sign of say 30 feet, which is a variance from the bylaw as we know it now. In your considered opinion, would that assist Boston Pizza in achieving what they want to do? Would you say that some signage is better than nothing? I guess that's my question.
I have done no research on this. I am here only to speak to our franchisees and their standing, and let you know that I think that they're doing everything else they can to make this business successful. In terms of measuring angles from the highway to the sign, and I will rely upon the experts that have already spoken.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. I see no further questions.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chantal Martins, and I'm the owner of the Weight Loss Clinic, which is at 1A5779 Turner Road, so right next to Boston Pizza. And I'm here to support the signage that's been proposed by Boston Pizza. I believe that the sign will increase traffic and visibility for not only Boston Pizza, but for the whole complex, including my business as well. When we moved here, we do have another location in BC, and we did find it to be more challenging to for people to locate where we are. We do use Boston Pizza as a reference as far as when we let people know where we're located, and we definitely did find, although spending a similar amount of in advertising per capita, we have found it to be more difficult for people to find us where we're located. And we believe that this sign would, again, improve not only our business, but business for other people in the mall as well.
Okay. So, Councillor Hogan.
Just quickly, Your Worship, you said you used Boston Pizza as a reference for people to find you?
Yes, we do.
Okay,
and not everybody knows where Boston Pizza is. So that's why it would be nice for everybody to know where they are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I see no further questions. Thank you, ma'am. Welcome.
Hi. My name is Jackie O'Brien, and I'm in support of the variance for a number of reasons. One, just in fact that the staff, of which my granddaughter is one, most of the staff, or a good portion of the staff, have been there since day one, which indicates the integrity of the owners and their willingness to work with staff. His wife is just as involved in the training of the cooking, which I've read on the blog has been questionable at times, and I can certainly vouch for the fact that the food has definitely improved. But having said that, when I'm driving, yes, I noticed the sign for the conference center, and it is exactly as other speakers have spoken of, but when I drive by Boston Pizza, if I'm coming from the south end, I don't see it. Unless I turn onto Turner Road, I'm not able to see it. If I come from the north, yes, there's this small sign, but you would need to be looking for it. So I think they definitely need the sign. I think also the fact that council has approved it at one point and now has retracted is really a question of what is happening here. I think it is growing as we speak, so I don't want to speak too much about it. I just think that when a decision is made in any business, it is costly to retract. So one must think of that. So I think if council could think of what is happening here, there's no true fact of accidents. There's just opinions, studies, and how many studies have we done? And how much can the city afford? Which I think the cost, if there's any repercussions, will come back to the taxpayers again. And I've lost my train of thought. But I just feel that you really need to think carefully. This is a gentleman and his wife and family who have moved here, who have spent money here, and we do not, as we well know, want to be known as the city who makes it really difficult for new business. I personally have been in business for 35 years, and I know that this city has got that reputation. And we're trying to get over that. And this is a very good indication of exactly that situation. It's just another way for people to prove that they are right. And City Council is really making it difficult. That's all I have to say.
Okay, we've got a question for you. Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. I just wanted to make sure that you realize that the reason that this whole variance was recalled for reconsideration by the mayor was done under completely legal and proper ways, and it was properly done. So I just don't want you to leave here with the feeling that we're doing this, just to spite somebody. That was not the case at all.
No, I didn't feel that.
So I want to make sure that you realize. And then the other point also is, and I hope you realize that it makes it difficult for us as well, to give a variance when we do not have a bylaw in place that deals with the subject matter.
Did the city have a bylaw in place for the conference center?
No, I've made my point clear about that. That's a very valid question. And you have, that's a point well taken. But the whole point is, though, that two wrongs don't make a right.
That's true, but in this case, I think the second wrong is wrong.
Okay.
Okay? So we can agree to disagree.
Okay, thank you very much.
My name is Kevin Beausoleil, 2969 Meadow Drive. If there is anything most important to a business, it is certainty. Certainty of existence, certainty of operations, and certainty of planning. And yes, certainty of our political process. If an issue that has been given full due process and letters of authorization written and filed based on the outcome of that due process can then be overturned without notice, then my question is, how can the local businesses continue to operate in confidence of certainty? Once you take certainty out of the equation, you start to erode the very foundation that supports any business. I ask Mayor and Council to do the right thing and reconsider the 5-4 vote that took place October 4th and allow Boston Pizza to move forward with its signage plans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan Perpluck of 2784 Joanna Terrace. I'd just like to speak in regards to, like he mentioned, the variance being approved and then being recalled. If the sign is going to be that big of an issue, especially with the LED component, as you had said, Paji, there's going to be a bylaw to govern this. So once this sign is up, if that bylaw makes a decision saying that there is no third-party advertising, it must only do Amber Alerts, then they must follow that bylaw or they would be fined. Is that correct?
I believe that for us to now allow this variance will influence the proposed bylaw in such a way that we have our hands tied as far as placement in conjunction with safety issues is concerned. Once the signage is in place, it's precedent. And I don't believe, maybe staff can correct me on it, but that would make it almost impossible to come up with a bylaw as I would like to see it, and others.
So is that why we're sitting in this situation now, because there is an LED sign sitting here at the conference center? That it is setting that precedence? So
No, it's not the case.
The sign in this facility, because there's been numerous suggestions that it somehow contravenes the bylaw. When the sign was put in this facility, and the sign does conform with the sign bylaw that specifically allows signs like that in the downtown area. So this sign did not contravene any bylaw.
Okay, so this sign does not contravene any bylaw, but does go against what you said for safety and concern for the Ministry of Transportation with how far it can be within intersections and such. So with that being said, there's going to be push and pull either way. With this Boston Pizza sign going up, with the LED component, if they were to agree to whatever is in place right now, they would not put third-party advertising on until a bylaw was in place upon a reasonable term. I mean, it's been 4 years, is 8, 9 months, a year, an acceptable amount of time to not set that legal precedent.
Well, we expect to have this bylaw sometime in January, February at the latest, if I'm not mistaken. Wouldn't it be a lot better not to put the cart before the horse and deal with it in the sequence that makes sense to me?
I do agree with you. So do not put the cart before the horse. If we had the LED component, it was the extra $80,000 on the sign. The bylaw was in place, and all it can do is say it's 1204 and 5 degrees. That is the bylaw. That's what it can do. You spent your money, you wasted it, sorry. I mean, that would be the business owner's risk. Is that correct?
Well, again, doing it this way ties our hands in a rather severe way, at least in my mind, for us to come up with a meaningful bylaw on electronic signage. I don't think this is the right way of doing it.
Okay. And
Councillor Kim.
Are we debating every person that comes up? Are we going to listen to them and then let's debate ourselves? I'd really prefer that. It's 9:18. We started at 9:30 this morning. We had a couple hours off. Let the people speak. Let us make our decision.
I think in this particular case, the gentleman directed a question to Councillor Patchy, I think, and that's what started. But your point's taken. Thank you, sir. I see no further questions.
And one last thing was, I'm looking at this whole process of City Council, and I'd love to get some new young blood into it. I'm looking at running for council next year, and if that did happen, and we were able to somehow revoke a decision that was made, that would considerably reflect my running for council, when knowing that something can be pulled out and I would be possibly held liable and have to come up with my own legal funds to do that. So that is one thing to also consider as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Council. My name is Doug Bromwich, 711 Poplar Street. I was here before you before in opposition to this proposal. Just a point of clarification. I met with the proponent last week at his invitation. And we had a 2-hour conversation. It was spirited. And I said at the end of the meeting I wouldn't come before you tonight. I said my bit, and that was it. However, when I got to the office today, I had numerous emails and phone calls suggesting that I had changed my mind, and now I'm in support of it. For the record, and to clarify things, I am still opposed to this sign. I did challenge the proponent to come up with a more creative idea how to do it, and I think there's ways to do it. I think there's a win-win here. It's not a win-lose. And I would ask you to consider requesting the proponent to see if he could come up with more creative ways that meet his requirements and the challenge that you have with the sign bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, did you have a question, Councillor Gipp?
Just for clarification, your relationship to the businesses?
I was a part of the team that put together Longwood Station, and I do sit on the advisory design panel.
Part owner of any of the businesses?
At Longwood? No.
Not the pub?
No.
Oh, okay. I thought you were.
Okay, I was, no longer.
Transparency.
Okay.
I love it.
All right, good.
I think that's all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, folks. You're all pretty formal. All the courtesy and everything, that's really
because we usually start by saying, okay, we need your name and address.
I knew you'd ask me that, John. Thank you. John Condon, 6895 Stone Road. I'm a customer of the Longwood Station. I imbibe and eat at the Longwood and at Boston Pizza. I shop at Thrifty's. I buy my wife's clothing there. So I'm a constant customer of Longwood Station. And I'd like to just end up, hopefully, as the last person speaking, on a positive note. All about yes. One more letter than no. Yes. And if you put this forward and end the turmoil that the papers have had a heyday with needlessly, put the sign up. It's positive for the whole Longwood Station. It will retain in Nanaimo a new, vibrant business person and family that is into the community, gung-ho, and it'll show people where Boston Pizza is. As a regular customer of Longwood Station, many times I've had to direct long-term residents to where that location is. As simple as that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is George Hansen. I live at 198 Garner Crescent. I figured I needed to speak to this evening since I've been standing before Council here for the last 4 years speaking about signage in our community. I have owned and operated a business in Nanaimo for 14 years. I come from a family of business owners, and I've worked for and operated businesses throughout my adult life. And I'm a former president of the British Columbia Business Improvement Areas. The December 8th staff report to Council offers 3 alternatives, and notwithstanding all of the process confusion around this application, I strongly suggest that Council should reject this variance application. My views differ from those who suggest that not allowing this variance would be unfriendly to business. I suggest the opposite, that to allow any portion of this application would be unfriendly to business. I'm not a Luddite. I'm not against technology and process. I am not anti-business. I am for tasteful design, appropriate scale, and fairness. And the scale of this sign is inappropriate at 45 feet or 50 feet. The LED component preempts Council's decision on LED signage, and a freestanding sign is counter to the city's bylaw limiting the number of signs on commercial frontage. Our democratic society is based on free market enterprise and fair competition. When it comes to business signage, we have fair competition in our community as long as every business is required to abide by the same rules. The intention of our signage bylaw, and whether that ends up having LED components to it or not, is that every commercial property is allowed 1 freestanding sign per highway frontage. The bylaw also allows any large commercial property, such as a shopping center, to have a relatively large sign so that other tenants can be identified. Driving through our community, you will see that shopping centers such as Woodgrove, Longwood, and Nanaimo North Town Centre have freestanding signs for the entire shopping center, while business within those shopping centers have signs affixed to the buildings and perhaps additional signage on the freestanding shopping center signs. Examples can be found where freestanding signs would seem to be inconsistent with this bylaw, such as the Dairy Queen at Country Club Centre or the Co-op Gas Bar at Brooks Landing. But these are distinct properties that are not part of those shopping centres, even though their parking lots are connected. The present environment for business signage in Nanaimo is fair to everyone. We have a level playing field. If Council were to approve this variance, it would instantly create an unlevel playing field that could only level itself out after every business, and especially every restaurant in Nanaimo, is given the same opportunity for a 45 to 50-foot sign with LED technology. The other day, driving from Terminal Park to Woodgrove, I noted how many businesses do not have their own freestanding signs. Tim Hortons, Staples, Thrifties, Future Shop, Save on Foods, Swiss Chalet, Sears, Best Buy, Zellers, Galaxy Cinema, Kelsey's, Montana's, Cactus Club, Great Canadian Superstore, The Bays, Starbucks, Walmart, and many others.
You didn't get an accident.
I didn't. Do any of us not know where these businesses are? What is to keep these companies from following Boston Pizza with applications of their own? Shouldn't these businesses be allowed 45 or 50-foot LED signs so that customers can find them as easily as Boston Pizza? And on what ground will Council stand to refuse these requests? Some have suggested that Council will be responsible for the loss of 60 jobs if this application is not approved. While we all certainly wish everyone to have prosperity and job security, I think it is unfair to lay such a claim at the feet of City Council. There is much more to successful business enterprise than the size of a sign. It has also been said that Council should not fear a flood of similar applications because most businesses cannot afford such signage. I have 2 responses to this claim. First, most of the businesses I just listed that presently do not have such signage are owned by multinational corporations with every bit as much financial capacity as Boston Pizza. And second, where is the business friendliness in approving signs that only a small number of businesses could ever afford? The sign proposed by Boston Pizza is taller, and maybe the same if it was dropped to 45 feet, than the sign for Woodgrove Shopping Center, the largest shopping center and the largest single taxpayer in the city of Nanaimo. Granting a variance even for a small freestanding sign for a business within a shopping center would set a dangerous precedent. But to allow a business to have its own freestanding sign that is bigger than the one allowed for the shopping center itself and includes LED technology, which is still being sorted out by the city bylaw, is a mistake. To approve this variance would permanently handcuff council and prevent the city from ever denying any similar application in the future. You will be accused of giving unfair business advantage to Boston Pizza, and having set the precedent, you will have to approve any and all similar applications, and there will be more applications. This application I propose is a complete countervention of our signage bylaw. Please choose option B in the staff report and reject the development variance permit application. Thank you.
Okay, sir, I've got a couple of questions here. Councillor Unger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Hansen, you mentioned tasteful design. Mm-hmm. Now, taste is usually in the eyes of the beholder, is it not? Mm-hmm. So what you think is tasteful may not be the same meaning to other people. So are you suggesting that the entire city should be bent on what is tasteful to you?
What I'm suggesting is that generally speaking, there are reviews to the design of signage. Even the signage company representative himself indicated that an LED signage, for instance, needed good management, because it really is permission to put a blank screen like a television screen there, and whoever's managing that screen is going to put whatever they put on there. So there's no way for that to be determined even.
Thank you.
Councillor Kipp.
Yeah, it's not to Mr. Hansen, it's more to staff. Variances have been issued at most of the malls for the height, the facades. I know Northtown Centre, Country Club Mall. I even believe Longwood Station, in its original concept, the pergolas on the top of the building were an overheight. I mean, we've done a million variances, have we not? I mean, we vary everything we do. We write a plan and then we vary it the next day. Am I correct, or?
Your Worship, certainly over the years, Council has entertained numerous variances for all sorts of parts of the zoning bylaw, sign bylaw that affect development, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And one now to the delegation. You said every business should have the same rules, right? Thank you.
Okay, I see no further questions. Thank you, sir. Now, who else would like to speak to this matter?
He's not going there, and we got someone to.
Good evening, Council. My name is Bob Bayless, 6110 Parkway Drive. I was going to start my conversation off tonight by explaining to some of you newcomers about my great-grandfather coming to this city from Ireland to work in the coal mines. But I thought, I'm going to take a different approach to this. If we could, I'd like to direct council to the photograph on the screen. If anybody's familiar with this group of gentlemen at Children's Hospital over in Vancouver, the one with number 15 on his jersey played here in this community, has given his time to various charities. And you're probably wondering, well, what's this got to do with a sign over at Boston Pizza? Well, I know that Boston Pizza supports these young kids when they're playing in our community. and I'd hate like hell to see Boston Pizza leave. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, is there anyone else that would like to speak to matters at Unit 2, 5779 Turner Road? For the second time, is there anyone in attendance that would like to speak to matters at 5779 Turner Road? Okay, so I guess it's going to...
The motion I tried to move earlier, that's recommendation number 1.
Second the motion for debate.
Okay, moved and seconded. I see no questions on it, so, I do now. Okay, Councillor Sherry.
I believe the staff have a comment to start off with.
Yeah, that's next on the...
Thank you. I've just been asked to just confirm the effect of the motion that's on the floor, just for clarity for council. So the motion on the floor at this time is a motion to reaffirm the issuance of the DVP. If that motion should pass, then the DVP would be issued at that time. If that motion were to fail, there would be a need for an additional motion after that time. And the options at that point would be either 2 or 3 on the agenda, either a motion to reject or a motion to amend. So I just wanted to make sure there was clarification on that.
Thank you. Councillor Kipp.
Thank you, Your Worship.
No, I didn't. I thought you I'll put you
Lloyd was on? Put him on.
Lloyd, yeah, just push the second button.
I yield to my senior.
That was smooth. Go ahead. Lloyd, yeah.
Which is smooth? The old man? Yeah. No, I can't support, as I say, let's go back to when this was a 5-3 or a 5-4 or whatever vote it was. I did not support it at that time because of the request of the excessive height going to 50 feet. Our bylaw currently, under our current bylaw, is less than 50 feet for the major malls and that. Okay, then the staff have indicated earlier that it reduces in height as it relates to the size, and then for the individual tenants within that development is at 30 feet. The bylaw as it stands now, as it relates to this property, is allowed 1 freestanding sign per frontage, or a maximum of 3 signs. Okay, I'm prepared to give 1 additional one for this organization at the 30-foot line, which is the same height as it relates to the individuals in the business community. I have also a concern that variance is being requested for something that we currently do not have in the bylaw, and that's the LED portion. Then when I start reading the correspondence as it relates from the Department of Highways and the bantying back and forth from the intersection related to the speed, that has my concern. When we were first presented with this presentation prior, we were told, and staff indicated in their report, that there is an indication that this is the only place in Western Canada that doesn't have a freestanding sign. So my grandson was going to Parksville to play in a hockey game. I asked him, I'd give him my camera to take a picture of the signage up there, because I wanted to see what the height was as it relates to the building that's there. Is it 50 feet? Is it 45 feet? Or is it at 30 feet? And how it relates to the surrounding there. And he says, well, Grandpa, let me use the computer, and he showed me how to go into Google. And you can basically walk around these buildings with the thing. And that's why I say that Parksville one appears to me on the Google deal is about the 30-foot level, or at the most 35-foot level. And as I say, I did over 40 sites on this thing and found exactly who had a sign and who didn't have a sign. So there's, as I say, there's in excess of 20 within the province that didn't show any sign. They got a sign on the side of the building with their fanciness. If you go into Longwood Station there and you see the design there about the bar and everything like that, that's what the other ones are, except they might have it in a different color, like white, which stands out. Okay, so it's a color combination that they need to address. When this proposal come before us, I suggested that they take the Boston Pizza sign, which is down on the tower that's over top of the building, and take that from there and place it in the center of the tower, which is above the roof line, which would give them more exposure. They said, well, they couldn't do that. I believe it was an understanding that the owner of the mall, current owner of the management of the mall, didn't want them to do that. But then I hear today that we want to put the sign up, we want to have the height, maybe we can go down to 45 feet, but that, and I'm prepared to say that there's not going to be any third-party advertisement on the LED as long as I own the sign. Then I hear from another people here that, well, the sign could be switched over to the landlord, to the tenant, so he's no longer involved in the commitment of the third party because we have a new owner. And where's the rules and regulations there? And the other thing is we haven't worked on the LED portion of our current sign bylaw as of yet, where there's indications now that right now, the example was the LED sign on this building, which is permitted because it's in the downtown area. It's a matter of when we start going after people for third party, the enforcement. How are you going to enforce that? That needs to be addressed. And that's why I'm prepared to pull that portion of the request of the LED until we deal with this. And should it happen to be involved or resolved into allowing this, then it's a lot easier to add on and than to try to have a removal. We have people within this community that have these signs in windows, and because of the strolling and whatever, and we've requested them to stop and remove the signs. We just don't seem to be able to get the cooperation from the individuals to do it. So on those bases, Mr. Chairman, the lack of security of no third-party signage and the LEDs not even in the sign bylaw as yet, I'm prepared to go to the 30-foot height freestanding with the Boston Pizza only.
Okay, Councillor Unger, did you have your still?
Thank you, Your Worship. We heard some very persuasive presentations from the public tonight, and I think that's very important. I want to thank you for taking the time out and doing that. I've been opposed to this reconsideration right from the beginning. Councillor Patchy said it was all correctly done and according to procedure. I tend to agree with Mr. Fred Taylor, who made a presentation, and made it very clear that once official notification was given, that there should not be reconsideration after that point, and I think that's very important. All the arguments I'm hearing are about the modern technology of signage. What is it we're going to allow and not? It all boils down to cosmetics and what is tasteful. We have LED signs all over the city. For instance, the BC lottery sellers have them in their store windows. They are LED signs. The new storage facility on the Island Highway North has a sign in front of it that has a constant changing of the information on it. So when I see that the argument is about the cosmetics of it, and I'm told that there's 60 or 80 or however many jobs involved, it really is a concern to me. We're in the process now of developing an economic development strategy for the city and for our community. And one thing that I've been hearing is we have to be business friendly. And that comes up again and again. We, from City Council side, say we are business friendly, but too often that's not what we hear from the other side. The process we're in now certainly does not send the message that we are business friendly, especially to prospective investors. This dragged out affair puts this particular business in a very difficult situation. We have voted once to approve it, and it was recalled, and the excuse given at the time was because there was a conflict of interest by one councillor. That has never been determined to be the case, and on top of that, what bothers me the most is the complaint was anonymous, and when somebody starts throwing stones from behind the bushes, I don't place much credence in it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, we have Councillor Kipp.
Thank you, Your Worship. Due process and merits of the first vote. I voted against it because I had lacked information on LED, and that was my big point of it. I understand the business concept. With the ministry, and going back to Councillor Padgett, page 92.13, third paragraph. The cognitive demands of drivers are greatest at locations where they must make decisions or actions which include merge areas, any intersection with a public road, on and off ramps, signed curves, and railway crossing. Major traffic signs are considered to be any warning, guide, or regulatory sign or changeable message sign, and this key highway signage is important for making these decisions and actions. Therefore, the ministry advises electronic billboard type signage should not be placed in these areas. They would say that we shouldn't even be on the roads. Everywhere they say there, people can't drive. So is it the road speed that we're worried about here? Then maybe it's too fast. Maybe we want to slow people down in our community so they stay a little longer. I truly think that the government study is a bit of a joke. They have draft on everything forever. A constant draft, and they won't make a decision, and it slays me. The length of time we've been going at the sign bylaw is, I think, 2 years before I got on council 2 years ago. It's been dragging for 4 years. It's like we can't make a decision. And do we lead as a council, or do we follow? There was no rules for high-rises 25 years ago when Number 1 Chapel got built. There was no rules for a climbing gym. It wasn't in our zoning, so we don't have a place for it. Those type of things come from the public, from business, not from us. I say apathetically a lot of times, we don't influence a lot unless it's 15 to 20 years from now. I've understood from the proponent that he will not grandfather this sign, and his ownership, that's all a man can offer in business, is when I own something, I'll say how it's done. To say anything else is a covenant, and you know how those work out. So I think the proponent has agreed to not grandfather his, and if a new rule comes in, he said he'd live by it. And downtown, we look to want to have Vegas down here, but that hasn't worked. So we're now looking to get the signs across our community. And I say, I don't blame the Stones. And we hear about every business should have the same rules. I truly believe in that. And that means the city is a corporation and a business too. And if we have now a different sign bylaw because we have ducks, we have LED signs, light emitting diode, we had liquid crystal displays, we got blimps now with big signs on them. So our sign bylaw is 4 years in the making, it's behind the times. And my other one is the bylaw of reconsideration. That's a huge point. The other one is that due process. This person went through what he believed to be an honorable process. He took months and months and months under the pretense that it wasn't a conflict. No one knew about that. It did come quite underhandedly. Has been extremely disruptive. It's caused nothing but negative vibes in our whole community over a sign. So I've actually checked out legal opinions on this too, and I've changed my mind on this. This proponent has gone through due process. Staff has been disappointed with that process and keep bringing up stuff day after day of why this shouldn't go through. And I honestly believe the man's been dragged through the mud. It's been terrible for our community. We've had all sorts of innuendo and insight about this, and we passed this once. We gave him the rule of due process, and I believe to do anything but that now is a bit of a travesty. Thank you.
Councillor Johnston. You're on.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've listened carefully to everything everybody has said today and agree with most. I made the mistake of saying when I was running for council that I would putting people first. That was my campaign slogan. Well, I've come to realize that that is an impossible thing to say. You cannot put all people first all of the time. Some people are first sometimes, some other times, but it's an impossible thing to live up to. But I committed to myself that I would always vote with my conscience. Always vote with my conscience. And today, I'm concerned about the safety issues, like every other person would be in our community. I'm concerned that a LED sign may cause a traffic accident, but then so might other instances, like static signs cause traffic accidents. I took it upon myself today to call the RCM Police in Duncan and spoke with the watch commander to say, has the sign that you have in your community, the Thrifty sign, caused any traffic accidents that you're aware of? And he said he was not aware of any traffic accidents created by that sign. There are reports from some American, I think those reports came from the US of A, that there have been signs. Possibly they're on freeways of 100 miles per hour, 100 miles per hour. Who knows where those reports come from? But in the city of Duncan, the LED sign at Thrifty's food store has not created or caused any accidents. I'm pleased that Mr. Mercier has agreed to reduce the height of his sign. Thank you for listening to me. That was important to me, and I'd prefer to see it lower. I still think 45 is high, but I respect the amount of time you put into your reports and your study and the preparation you made for council at your previous presentation. It's a difficult decision to make, but I voted in support of the variance the first time, and I'm not prepared to flip-flop on my decision tonight. I will vote in favor of the variance, and that will be keeping my conscience clear. Thank you.
Councillor Holden. Oh, sorry, Councillor Holden. You're next on? Sorry, I looked the wrong way because Councillor Kip's on. Sorry, Councillor Padgey's on next. Sorry.
Thank you. There's a lot of reasons why I wish we weren't doing this again. But we do have one large reason why we are doing it again, and that's because our city lawyer told us that we could not provide certainty that the bylaw that we had passed originally, the development variance permit, would survive a challenge if it were challenged in court. So just as one of the speakers said tonight, certainty is what we're trying to provide. That's why the motion's reconsidered. That's why we're all back here tonight. I would rather not be debating this because I lost the debate last time. But I really appreciate what Councillor Johnson said about conscience. We do have to vote according to our consciences. We do have to vote according to the set of beliefs that we carry forward here. I was pleased to hear Mr. Mercier say this is just a sign. And why are we going through so much to make a decision about it? I was also pleased that he did not say tonight that he would have to close the business if this sign isn't approved, because I think there's a lot more, as one of the other speakers said, to creating and conducting a successful business than just the kind of signage that's there. You know, there's been a lot of talk about whether Nanaimo is friendly to business or not. To me, being friendly to business, the best thing that we can do is to not provide special treatment to a few, but to provide a fair set of rules and regulations that are applied equally and predictably to all businesses. And it's, of course, those rules are subject to minor variations where there is a compelling reason for those variations. There isn't a compelling reason in this case. First of all, it's not particularly a small business. It's Boston Pizza. It would not be fair, and I agree with Mr. Hanson, to many local small businesses that do not have the choice of spending $250,000 on a single sign. If advertising is the issue, it seems like $250,000 would go a long way through other forms of advertising, whether they're newspaper or flyers or online or TV or just about anything, to make sure that everybody knows exactly where Boston Pizza is. And even without that kind of advertising, all it would take is 2 seconds on Google to find out exactly where Boston Pizza is, if that's where you want to go.
While you're driving?
And if you're simply responding to signs as to where you're driving, I'm not sure what percentage of the restaurants in town get to simply drive past customers. I think most of them rely on people that choose to go there and that keep going back. And I think Boston Pizza is doing a great job of attracting a clientele right now. I don't know and don't believe, frankly, that a major variance to our sign bylaw is going to make that much difference. Our sign bylaw, I just want to remind people, is generally middle of the road compared to other municipalities. Some have somewhat more liberal ones, others have far more rigid ones. And local businesses have lived with this sign bylaw for years. Yes, there have been some minor variations to that sign bylaw in a few cases, but this development variance permit would drive a truck through that sign bylaw, and we might as well not have one if we approve this application. So I'm just saying that let's remember what the role of government is here. It's not to give special preference. It's to make sure there's a level playing field that's fair and equitably applied to all, and that's why I can't support this variance.
Okay, Councillor Kipp, is this new information, or are you?
Councillor Badger.
No, you're next on here.
No, it's a rebuttal to my colleague. Variances, and I understand the variances. I don't think this is a massive variance that you're going to have to drive a truck through a whole bylaw. I think the bylaw is in dire need of being updated. That's why, I don't know why it's taken 4 years, because we're trying to get public input. We changed the whole thing on one letter from the ministry and sent it back. And it wasn't even, I don't even really validate this information because it doesn't look like a scientific study, and I understand from our presentation tonight that it wasn't verified by the government, that they don't have a study. And the Wisconsin one we haven't seen. I did see one from Toronto, 401. 90 miles an hour, it can tell that people's eyes are going off for 5 and 6 seconds at a time. They could check people's eyes. And they didn't have a high rate of crash, but there's a possibility for crash. So if we're worried about it, it's speed in the cars and the idiot drivers, then we slow them down. We've lived with this for years, and I don't know if it's a good sign bylaw. When I go to other communities, Dundas, downtown Toronto, phenomenal signs everywhere, 60, 70-foot LEDs, but that's kind of a Las Vegas thing. This is a business trying to attract clients to a place that has gone bankrupt. And it's a chain. There's a reason people buy franchises and like to go to franchises. I mean, there's a reason for that. And I don't believe the moving truck smashing through this whole bylaw. Maybe that's what it needs, is to be smashed to pieces by a big truck so that it gets to some reality, becomes consistent across all of our businesses, including our city. I would ask to my friends that are not in support of this because of the safety issue, you're willing to remove the sign out here? If they're unsafe, if you think putting up another one's unsafe on the highway, then I say the one out there is unsafe too. And I don't think it's unsafe.
Thank you, Worship. I'd just like to correct Councillor Kipp on his statement that there was not a study done. I believe Mr. Tucker would have the name of the company that did that particular research that the Ministry of Transportation based their findings on.
I don't have that information tonight.
You mentioned it this morning.
Yes, it was done in the United States by the United States Transportation Safety Research Board.
Thank you. Your Worship.
Okay, just wait.
It's my floor.
He hasn't interrupted you.
Your Worship, like Councillor Holdham and others have said, and Councillor Johnstone, we all have to vote our conscience on this. And I really have heard the side and the story of the people who want us to let Mr. Mercier have this sign. Councillor Holdham is absolutely correct when he talks about a fair and equal set of rules for everybody, and I mean everybody, and that we do not have in place until we have dealt with the bylaw that will deal with LED signs and electronic signage of other kinds. It's very important to do that. When Councillor Holdham and Councillor McNabb and myself sat on a sign committee, we did extensive work, and we compared, with the help of some very capable staff, how other municipalities of our size dealt with this. And we came up with about 6 similar-sized municipalities in the province who did not allow LED signage of any kind, and we came up with about 6 or 7 in the province, similar-sized again, who had a sign bylaw that dealt with LED signage, but they had restrictions. And the restrictions had to do with safety, it had to do with placement, it had to do with equal playing fields. And so when we recommended as a committee about a year ago that we probably should not have LED signage in Nanaimo in the first place, the committee was made moribund, and other people were asked to give their opinions, and of course we ended up with a totally different set of suggested rules for this bylaw. That is fair. That's how it works in democracy. I have absolutely no problem with it. But where it comes to safety, at an intersection that is among the 10 worst intersections accident-wise in Nanaimo, it really behooves us to do the right thing. And right now we are not in a position to do the right thing simply because we do not have the bylaw. I'll concur with Councillor Sherry that, of course, if this motion passes, then that's the end of it. Mr. Mercier will have his development variance permit. If it should fail, I am willing to go with Councillor Sherry and go as far as to allow, by variance, one free standing sign for Boston Pizza, provided it is not higher than 30 feet and provided it does not have an LED component. Thank you, Worship.
Thank you. For my part, I just want to say that, I do have safety concerns, but, I think it's important to recognize that we're dealing with cars traveling through that area at 80 kilometers an hour, and I think that does, in my opinion, differ from the downtown core. Good luck in trying to get through there at 80 miles an hour, 80 kilometers an hour, rather. But the thing is that I support the sign, and I'd like to see some kind of a resolution, if we can, to get a form of sign, but I do have a problem with LED at 50 feet. It's been brought up before that something in the neighborhood of 30-foot sign and not LED would be an option, and I am quite prepared to support that, because I'd like to see signage there, just not that large a sign and not LED. So, there's a motion on the floor, and the motion is to deal with option 1, to reaffirm the issuance of the development variance permit. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. It defeats, and we'll go into 2 or 3. Would somebody list Councillor Oldham?
Okay, to again provide some kind of certainty, I'd move that Council reject the development variance permit application as presented. So that would allow for.
Second.
Yes, could you maybe bring a little clarity into this here?
Again, I've just been asked to provide clarification with regard to the impact of a vote on this particular motion. So the wording, I just wanted to clarify if the wording that I've got here would work for what Councillor Oldham is asking. The Council reject its motion of October 4th, 2010 to issue development variance permit number DVP 156 for the property located at number 2, 5779 Turner Road, Boston Pizza, to vary sign bylaw 1987, number 2850. And if that is appropriate wording.
Okay. Amend my wording to suit that.
Okay. The impact of that particular motion, a motion to reject the DVP, if that passes, then upon motion the DVP would be cancelled. If the motion were to fail, then the original DVP is issued. So this is the deciding one.
What the hell? So
can't amend.
Yep.
If the intention is to get an amended DVP on the table, there is no need to go through a rejection motion first. If the intention is instead to get an amended motion, so not so obviously supporting to one way or the other, but if the intention is to get an amendment on, it would be appropriate to go straight to that. If the intention is in fact to have it rejected, then the motion that has been introduced here is appropriate.
Okay, would somebody like to make an amendment then?
No, all we have to do is approve number 3. That covers it.
No, it doesn't. That's not what we're asking for here. Did you want to? Oh, sorry. We've got the councillor. Patchy, did you want to make a motion at this point, or do you want to?
I can make a motion that we go to number 3 and grant some, but not all of the variances requested. And by some, I do mean that we grant the freestanding sign only, and that it is provided that does not exceed 30 feet in height, and that it does not have an LED component.
Second motion.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Sorry? Okay, go ahead. You're on.
Okay, I just need some clarification from staff. Are we able to change the terms of the application this way, or must we say yes or no to whatever the applicant asks for? I'm just concerned that we can actually amend the application this way.
Your Worship, there are limited circumstances in which it can be amended. Probably Mr. Swaby or Mr. Tucker could talk more specifically about that.
Mr. Tucker?
Your Worship, the notice that was circulated to the adjoining property owners was in terms of the application as it was amended on the September 13th council meeting. In other words, 50 feet high and with an LED component to it. If the wishes of council were to do something less than that but still grant a permit, it would be obviously you have to have the second sign in order to have a discussion of its conditions, and then it would be up to council to determine what height that they would want to we're comfortable approving, and with or without a LED component. So you might want to take the motions separately.
What the answer is that yes, you can amend it if you're downsizing, but if you wanted to increase it, you could not do that because that exceeds the notification that was made to the public. So yes, this amendment, in our opinion, is in order.
Okay. Question. All those in favor? No. Sorry? Oh, the question you mean? I thought you were calling a vote question here. Go ahead.
I want clarification.
Okay, you're on.
Okay? We were given 3 options. The first option was denied. Now, I understand Councillor Hold'em was trying to put forward option 2, okay, as amended. Okay? And my understanding, if that was put through, then that would kill the application. Then number 3, if we wanted to change the size or that would give us the opportunity to make a motion to that effect. Is that what I'm led to believe?
I'll have Mr. Holmes respond, Your Worship.
Your Worship, Councillor Hold'em did make a motion, but it was not seconded.
I was ready to second the motion, staff, except that I was led to believe that there was no need for that we could go to the third one, and now we're having difficulty with the third one.
Council could have done either.
Your Worship, there is no need to do the second one, and you can go straight to the third, so you're not having any difficulty from staff's perspective going to the third one. We've told you that the motion that is on the floor now, moved by Councillor Paggi, seconded by yourself, is totally in order. There's no need to do the second one to go to the third one. You can go straight to the third one. That's what we tried to tell you.
Okay, so what's on the floor now is, according to...
In our view, it's in order.
Thank you.
Your Worship, just a point of privilege. I made the motion number 2 because I thought we had to clear the decks in order to get to number 3. So I just wanted to say that.
There was that confusion.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Question on the motion.
No. Councillor Ungary, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. We are getting so tied up again, we're going in circles. Is it possible, if this is rejected, is it possible for the applicant to make another application and start from ground zero with a new proposal?
I don't think we want to do that.
Absolutely. Well, Your Worship, that's always possible. I'd have to defer to Mr. Tucker as to any timelines that may apply under the bylaw.
That's my question.
Do you know, Mr. Tucker?
Typically, it's a 6-month waiting period, but that's in reference to rezoning. With variance permits, I would have to consult the procedural bylaw, and I don't know offhand on that one.
Okay, well, Mr. Kenny,
we've changed the numbers before.
You bring it back.
I was going to say, council could, I believe, give leave to allow a new application to be submitted.
Okay, well, Mr. Kenny, I think the point here is that there is a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded, and if that should fail for any reason, then I think we could probably look at that option, but if it passes, it's academic.
Your Worship, just one comment about that. If this motion does pass, council, it would be in order for council to do a second motion to issue the permit as amended. That's to consider after the voting of this one.
Okay, what is the motion?
Question to staff.
Yeah. Well, just a sec. Councillor Sherry, did you have something to add to it? You're next, and then Councillor Kipp.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the way looking at the picture right now, the request was turned down as there. We go into the second or the third option that was included in the report. The council of the day that's here have put forward a motion allowing, recommending that we allow a freestanding, limited it to the 30 feet, and limiting with no LED. So the council can make that decision. Okay?
That's right. So they've got
what happens after that, the applicant, if not satisfied, doesn't have to take that forward. If he wants to make another application which is changed, then he has the opportunity. Is that right?
That would be my opinion, Your Worship, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Kipp, did you have something again?
Well, I've heard there's been some bargaining positions before by the proponent. I heard there's bargaining positions for the sign now that will maybe lower, higher, wider, fatter, shorter, whatever, different color, not a bright light. Can we refer this back to see over the next week or so for two things? To refer to see if there's any grounds between the proponent and staff, and to get a legal opinion on what Mr. Taylor talked about, where our bylaw says that the reason for consideration was invalid.
Go ahead, Ms. Kenny.
Your Worship, with regard to Mr. Taylor's point, I just wanted to comment that we have had legal advice on that, and the city solicitor's view is that the city had the right to reconsider this under the community charter and a different section than Mr. Taylor's referring to. So we believe that is clear and unequivocal.
It would have been nice to have that. I didn't see that.
Question on the motion on the floor.
Did somebody ask that the motion be read?
Yeah, I want to know what.
Over now into
well, that's where we're going to get it for you. So stand by one. Go ahead.
I mean, the dimensions are...
As Mr. Holmes mentioned, this would be a motion to amend. So the motion that I believe we're looking at this point is that Council amend Development Variance Permit number DVP 156 for the property located at number 25779 Turner Road, Boston Pizza, to vary signed bylaw 1987 number 2850 to allow a second freestanding sign on the Island Highway road frontage of the subject property, but to restrict the sign to a maximum of 9.1 meters, 30 feet in height, and not include the LED animated component.
That was the motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Question.
That's good.
May I ask one question, please? Would it be appropriate for the proponent to speak?
No.
No, it wouldn't. I think you voted already, so we know where you're coming from. But I think there's a motion on the floor we'd like to vote on. Okay? The question on the... What's that?
Question on the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. All those in favor? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The motion passes.
Opposed? Opposed?
Opposed? 2 opposed. Okay, so it's 5-2.
Next time.
Do you agree with that, Ms. Harrison?
That's correct. At this point, we would require a motion.
Another motion?
To issue the DVP as amended.
Yes. Okay. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Kipp is opposed. Balance of council in favor. Motion passes. We'll move into... sorry? Okay, is there a seconder? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Which one?
Report on public hearing. I would like to make a motion that staff review an alternate process to that was carried on for this covenant amendment application to see if there's an alternate way that we can do this.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, but we did pass G, so we're going into H on 730 Sterling. And the staff recommendation that Council 1 receive the report pertaining to zoning amendment bylaw 2010 number 4000.492, which is presented under the bylaw section of the agenda. And 2, direct staff. Came through a different door. And 2, direct staff to register a covenant to secure the following prior to the adoption of the bylaw, should Council support the bylaw at a third reading. And the first bullet is frontage works, and 2, to amend the existing covenant for rainwater. Okay, could we just... Okay, I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. RA 255 at 149 Wakasai Avenue. Staff recommendation that Council receive the report pertaining to zoning amendment bylaw 2010 number 4000.493, which is presented under the bylaw section of this agenda. And 2, direct staff to secure the following prior to adoption of the bylaw, should Council support the bylaw at the third reading. First bullet is road dedication. 2nd, frontage works. 3rd, vehicle access restrictions. And 4th, community contribution. Is there a seconder? Seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. RA 257, 1905, 1913, 1917, and 1921 Northfield Road. Staff recommendation that Council 1 receive the report pertaining to the zoning amendment bylaw 2010 number 4000.494, which is presented under the bylaw section of the agenda. And 2, direct staff to register a covenant to secure the following prior to the adoption of the bylaw, which should Council support the bylaw at the third reading. And that is A, road dedication, B, vehicle access restricting vehicle turnaround, pedestrian connectivity, and lot consolidation, and C, release the blanket right-of-way.
Move the staff recommendation. Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. RA 265, Covenant Amendment 4745 and 4801 Ledgerwood Road. Staff recommendation that Council approve the proposed Covenant Amendment, which was forwarded to the public hearing held 2010 December 02.
Move the staff recommendation.
Moved and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The official community plan general amendments. Staff recommendation that Council receive the report pertaining to the official community plan amendment bylaw 2010 number 6500.013, which is presented in the bylaw section of the agenda.
Move the staff recommendation.
Seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. The Corporate Services Regional District of Nanaimo Duke Point Sewer Local Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1004.04, which is 2010. Staff recommendation that Council waive the consent requirements under Section 801.4 of the Local Government Act by consenting to the adoption of Regional District of Nanaimo Duke Point Sewer Local Service Area Amendment Bylaw number 1004.05, 2010, and that the Regional District of Nanaimo be notified accordingly.
Move the staff recommendation.
Seconder? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. City Collector. Staff recommendation that Council 1 assign the duties and responsibilities of Collector for the City of Nanaimo to Ms. Laura Mercer, Manager of Revenue Services, and that Mr. Brian Clemens, Director of Finance, remain the Deputy, and 2, rescind all previous assignments for Collector.
Move the staff recommendation.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 2011 Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Requirements. Staff recommendation that Council receive the report pertaining to Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw 2010, number 7119, which is presented on the bylaw section of this agenda, the agenda, sorry.
Move the staff recommendation.
Seconder. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Southwest Bulk Water Rate Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 7099.01. Staff recommendation that Council receive the report pertaining to the Southwest Bulk Water Rate Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 709901, which is presented in the bylaw section of the agenda. Moved. Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Information items. There are 6 of them, and if somebody would like to move. Seconder?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on any of those items? If not, we'll all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Move into reconsideration of bylaws to be moved by Councillor Sherry. And I'll turn it over to you.
I'll use the green sheet, so that's up for the leadership to do.
Yes.
I move that the Waterworks Rate and Regulation Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 7004.05, which is to amend Schedules A and B I move that this bylaw be adopted.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move the Garbage and Recyclables Collection Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 7089.03, to amend Schedule A, be adopted.
Second motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move that the third reading of the Southwest Bulk Water Rate Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 7099.01, to amend the rate for bulk water supply to Southwest be reconsidered.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that the Southwest Bulk Water Rate Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 7099.01, be amended to correct the rate per 1,000 gallons of water from $1.68 to $1.58, and remove Section 3 effective date from the bylaw.
It's nice to see it coming down. Is there a seconder? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move the Southwest Bulk Water Rate Amendment Bylaw 2010, number 7099.01, pass third reading as amended.
Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move that the Municipal Solid Waste Routes E and F Collection Amendment Bylaw number 2010, number 7112.01, to amend Schedule A, be adopted.
Moved and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Introduction of bylaws. I move that Revenue Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw 2010, number 7119, to provide for the borrowing of money in anticipation of revenue, pass first reading.
Seconder. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that the bylaws 2010, number 7119, be passed at second reading.
All those in favor? It's been seconded. Oh, carried.
I move that the bylaw 2010, number 7119, pass at third reading.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Introduction of development bylaws. I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2010, number 4000.492, as it relates to property at 730 Sterling Avenue, to rezone the subject property from single-family residential zone, RS1A, to residential triplex and quadruplex, RM2, in order to facilitate the construction of a quadruplex, past third reading, first reading.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that zoning bylaw 2010, number 4000.492, be passed at second reading.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2010, number 4000.493, as it relates to property at 149 Wakasai Avenue, to rezone the subject property from low-density multifamily residential, RM3, to medium-density multifamily residential, RM5, in order to add density in the form of a 30-unit, three-story apartment building. Move that this be passed at first reading.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2010, number 4000.493, be passed at second reading.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that zoning amendment bylaw 2010, number 4000.494, as it relates to property at 1905, 1913, 1917, and 1921 Norfolk Road, to rezone the subject property from single-family residential to public institution zone P2 in order to facilitate the development of a personal care facility containing 120 beds for the purpose of dementia care, pass first reading.
Second. Moved and second. Is there a question on it?
Yeah, I would question. Your Worship, this is a care facility going into off of Northfield, and it's quite a bit of residential area. I've had concerns from people in Begonia Way and Lancashire and Latimer and that about parking. And typically around VHA facilities, we've had parking issues, Grant Avenue, wherever the hospital and that. What will be included in this as a parking or traffic study around that area?
To staff?
Yes, Your Worship. The requirement for parking on site is 54 spaces, and they are providing 70 spaces.
Oh, so there's transitional parking in that too?
There's additional over and above the bylaw requirements.
Good to know. Thank you.
Councillor Patchy.
Thank you, Worship. Quite some time ago now, Councillor Johnstone and myself paid a visit to one of the neighbours on the east side of the property. And the concern that was expressed to us at that point was the proximity of the parking stalls next to this person's property. And he wanted it to be on the other side where it would have had the same effect, but then for someone else. So there was no concern expressed as to the numbers except the location.
Okay.
So it's going to public hearing. That's the point.
So it's been moved and seconded.
For first reading,
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that zoning bylaw, amendment bylaw 2010, number 4000.494, be passed at second reading.
Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Move the official community plan amendment bylaw.
I think that's my name on the speaker's list.
Sorry, I'm sorry, I missed that. Go ahead.
Just a question of staff with the 120 beds and the staff and so on that will be required to work there, and knowing where it's located on Northfield. Please instruct me on to whether or not there will be contemplation or consideration for a signal light anywhere there on this extremely busy corridor that we're developing to connect the two highways.
Your Worship, at this time there's not a traffic signal proposed for this intersection.
Does that mean that we've done a traffic study to determine, much like we did on Terminal for the apartment building?
That's correct.
So the traffic study has been completed?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that the official community plan amendment bylaw 2010 number 6500.03, which is a general text amendment to the official community plan bylaw 2008 number 6500, to maintain the effectiveness and accuracy of the bylaw. I move that this bylaw be passed at first reading.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move that the official community plan amendment bylaw 2010 number 6500.013 be passed at second reading.
Second the motion.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
We received the correspondence.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the correspondence?
Your Worship?
Yes.
Would it be appropriate at this time to make a motion to support the efforts of the National Kin Club to buy an ad, a 112-page ad, $250? No?
Policy on that. If we start buying ads in magazines and programs, we'll be in over our heads so wild.
We're just asking the question, Your Worship, because many mayors and municipalities have supported that association.
Many that we support.
Okay, so we have Councillor Bestwick next.
It's not on that topic, so if you would like to deal with that topic first.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
If I may.
You're on.
Okay. Procedurally, the motion is to receive the correspondence.
Yes.
We take a vote on that. Then, if any member of council wishes to deal with any of the letters out of the correspondence, then we grab your attention and ask them to be dealt with separately after we receive them.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right. So you want to deal with that first one. I don't know, is that not something that would go to grants and aid? That
I don't know. I just
Fails for a seconder.
I was just asking if it would be appropriate. I didn't know whether there was a policy in place or not, Your Worship, but I certainly would be willing to support it.
You want to take a...
Your Worship, it's up to council whether you want to dedicate funds to this. Staff would not do this. Our policy would be to say no, because even though it's a worthwhile and valued function, it's not something directly related to the city operation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, Councillor Besser, you didn't have anything else to add, did you, on that? Did you?
Not on that.
Okay.
But I do have on the correspondence, yeah.
Okay. So go ahead.
I would just like to address item C, and that we refer item C back to staff to provide a report or to the Economic Commission in view of this most recent request from the Bank of Island North Film Commission, and it indicates for consideration of a financial contribution. And so I would like a report on where funds such as this may come from, and if in fact there's been any dialogue or could there be dialogue or communication that $30,000 request may be something less than that. But I would like us to, the motion that I would like to make is to refer this back to staff for a report sent forward to the Economic Development Commission for consideration of this request.
So, Your Worship, I may be saying the same thing as Councillor Bestwick, but I'd like to recommend that Council make this as a referral motion to the Economic Development Commission rather than to staff.
I think was your motion to refer. Is there a seconder?
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I see next we have Councillor Johnston. You don't have anything new on to add. Councillor Kipp.
I just wanted to do the same thing that Councillor Bestwick did, so it's fine.
Okay, Councillor Unger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item D, information from staff. My memory is that we've been giving a considerable amount of money to the downtown business improvement, and that included capital works such as streetlights, but it's never made it past their budget, and that's why it hasn't been done. Am I correct in that?
Your Worship, the city has in the past provided a capital allocation to the old DNP, which is now the DNBIA. However, it no longer does so. My recommendation on this one would be to refer this to staff, because staff are currently undertaking a review of street lighting and street lighting priorities across the city, and we would, I think it's reasonable for us to include this request in that review.
Okay.
I move to refer to staff.
Second. Moved and second. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Sherry.
What for?
Nothing. Okay. We're taking you off here then. So there's no further action on any of course. Correspondence. So we'll move on to council appointments. Appointments to the Regional District of Nanaimo Board. Recommendation that Council 1 confirm the appointments to the Regional District of Nanaimo Board to continue for 2011 as follows: Mayor Rattan, Councillor Bestwick, Councillor Kipp, Councillor Johnstone, Councillor Holdham, Councillor Sherry, and Councillor McNabb. And 2, assign 5 votes to each of the following 4 directors: Mayor Rattan, Councillor Bestwick, Councillor Kipp, and Councillor Johnston. And 3, assign 4 votes to each of the following 3 directors: Councillor Holdham, Councillor Sherry, Councillor McNabb. And 4, appoint and establish a schedule for primary and secondary alternate directors to alternate monthly as follows: Councillor Unger as primary alternate director starting December 1, 2010, and Councillor Paggi as secondary alternate director, period. Someone like move all 4? Is there a seconder? Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We're moving into other business. At the in-camera meeting of council held Monday, 2010, November 22, Councillor Beswick put forward the following motion, and that is that the time for holding the in-camera meetings of council be rescheduled to 5 p.m. or immediately following the regular meeting of council.
Not a good idea tonight.
That's funny, I was thinking that. Did you want to make that as a motion? Or
That's
okay.
That's the one
Yep.
I'd like to make. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that?
Now, what the motion is?
The motion is that the time for holding in-camera meetings of council be rescheduled to 5 p.m. or immediately following the regular meeting of council.
Okay, we got two time schedules here. As far as I'm concerned, Mr. Chairman, I can support immediately following the regular council meeting. I can't support going at 5 p.m.
Councillor Beswick.
We experimented with Monday mornings at 10:30, and regrettably, for those that have other occupations deriving an income from, it would be appropriate for future members of council to know that their current workplace would be least impacted if the in-camera meeting was held prior to the regularly scheduled open meeting, which I think it was for, I don't know, but probably decades. So in my particular case, the experiment isn't working, and therefore the recommendation, if it's immediately following, if you would like me to put and/or, then I'm quite comfortable to put and/or.
Okay. We have Councillor Unger and then Councillor Holden.
Thank you, Your Worship. Could we get some information from staff as to any additional costs that would be involved in a 5 p.m. meeting or even a later meeting?
5, there is an information staff report that identifies the costs involved related to meals and overtime.
White page 185.
Yeah, right near the back, 185.
So the cost of having the meeting at 5 p.m. is estimated at $15,000. Having the meeting immediately following the council meeting, it's estimated at $4,000. Those are annual amounts.
Okay, Councillor Holden.
Okay, yeah, that's a bit daunting, but I still, I understand this to mean that the in-camera meetings would be rescheduled to 5 p.m. and that if we needed to have any further time to consider the in-camera items, we would deal with them after the regular council meeting, because we can't vary the 7 o'clock time. Is that basically the way it works? Bill?
Maybe just for clarification, the open council meetings are at 7 p.m. and the FP Cow start at 4:30. So the suggested 5 p.m. really wouldn't work for FP Cow. Is that
Immediately following.
immediately following? Sorry. Okay. Or immediately following. Okay.
We're talking two different things.
Yeah, that's.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Well, just wait one, and we'll get you on there. Hit that button, and Councillor Johnstone.
Worship, has any consideration been given to having a meeting, the in-camera meeting at 8:30 in the morning or 8 o'clock prior to the open meeting? I certainly don't mind being there the hour ahead of time. Staff's already there, and it would be no cost then.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
Yeah, I
like this.
That would be my preference.
It's we're at your disposal. That works for us.
Okay, is there a motion on the floor now just for?
Yes.
Okay, and that's the one that's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Oh, sorry, you've got another one here. Councillor Sherry, and then Councillor Kipp.
Well, Mr. Chairman, are we talking about the in-camera meeting as it relates to the Mondays when we have full council meetings?
Or are we talking about, because I hear mention about the finance committees?
Your Worship, we're assuming, to be corrected, of course, by council if that's council's wish, but we're assuming that this motion applies to council days and that on Finance and Policy Committee of the Whole days that the in-camera meeting would still be held immediately following
that meeting.
Open meeting.
Okay, and why I can't support this 5/immediately following as it relates to council days, when we have the committee of the whole or finance and whatever terminology we want, we're able to deal with the agenda and follow that with the in-camera session. Okay, and there doesn't seem to be any problems with that. The problem I have with when you start dealing with your council days, you start coming down here and you have to be here before 5 o'clock so that you meet in the back room, and then there's the additional cost to the city for the meals that have to be supplied through this corporation on there because they got the franchise here, and the additional costs for those. I personally like to have the in-camera meetings immediately following the council meeting, because at least that gives me the opportunity of that day to sit down and have a meal at home with my wife, which we can get together, okay, and carry on from there. But we've had, since we've moved into this establishment, and we were, in fact, having in-camera sessions prior to the council meetings, and you call me a picky eater, fine, but as far as I'm concerned, the value for what was being served was, in my estimation, not up to my standard, and I did not participate in partaking in those meals. So that's why I will not be supporting the motion as it presented on the floor right now.
Okay, Councillor Kipp.
Clarification, we don't start at 10 o'clock. Usually we start at 10:30 on the report, but that's okay. It's usually been 10:30. I too agree with Councillor Bestwick that it's really tough. I still work, believe it or not. I still work, and the Monday mornings is tough. I know I'm finding it. What about after our 4:45 meeting on the Committee of the Whole?
I think there's a motion on the floor.
No, but I'm saying, is that a problem if we go to 4:45, and that's not usually a long meeting, and then we have a meeting after that would solve this, and then we'd have 1 week. We would have 1 week before our next council meeting to go over any of that in-camera, and God, then the papers have got at least a week to put our in-camera stuff in before our next meeting, right, Derek? Yeah. So I wonder if we don't pass this motion because there's confusion, and just say post our Committee of the Whole meeting, we'll have in camera. Is that possible? I mean, anything's possible.
That's possible. Recent experience, in my view, has shown that there's enough material for a meeting, in-camera meeting, virtually every time council has an open meeting. So some stuff would have to wait under that scenario, and the in-camera meeting would be quite long. But that's your choice.
Well, we have one in front of our regular meeting, you're saying?
Oh, sorry, I was interpreting you saying we'd only meet in camera at the FP Cow Day.
Yeah, that's my point, is we meet at the FP Cow, then we go in camera, and that in camera would be for the next meeting. We might have to bring it forward. That would give us more time to contemplate and release it from in camera too. That's my view. So I wouldn't vote in favor of this motion, but vote in favor of the post-Committee of the Whole meeting.
Okay. The motion on the floor now is the one that Councillor Bestwick made, and let's vote on that one way or the other, and just so we can get something going here. So,
Speakers list doesn't matter.
Councillor Kipp is finished. You're the next one. Sorry.
Thank you. I'm like Councillor Sherry. With this job, there's so many evening events that I prefer to have dinner with my wife instead of eating it here and having the taxpayers pay for it.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is the one before us here. Councillor Bestwick.
Well, I apologize to my colleagues if the dinner factor is an issue. I'm quite comfortable to bring my own, so I have no problem packing my own lunch. I don't expect the taxpayer to fork the bill for me to eat, so I'd be quite comfortable to bring my own.
Okay, well, the motion on the floor hasn't changed in the last few minutes, so it'll be that the time, I don't know if I need to read this thing again, at 5 p.m. It's the motion that is before you. All those in favor? We have 1, 2 in favor. Opposed? 1, 2, 3. Okay, the motion's defeated.
Your Worship, may I make a motion then to meet at 8:30 in the morning prior to the open meeting on the night?
That's an in-camera at 8:30?
Yes. You can go home and have a sleep.
Well, just a second. That's the motion is that the in-camera start at 8:30 then. Is there a seconder for that? Okay, it died for lack of a seconder. Councillor Kemp.
I make a motion that our in-camera meetings are after our committee of the whole meeting. No seconder, thanks.
Okay.
You guys are bears for fun.
Huh? Question period.
Question period.
Well, we've got to vote on this motion. So
I didn't get a seconder, did
Yeah, Diana did.
I think Diana did second, did you? Or what?
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. So.
Question.
Okay. Question. All those in favor? We have 3, 4. Well, okay. So the motion passes. Let's just. No. This is the.
After committee of the whole.
No, we haven't yet, so that's fine.
We don't have them there.
So we're just killing Monday in camera meetings.
Okay. Ms. Harrison, could you? I think
All
it was
those in favor of
Councillor
having in camera after the committee of the whole.
Procedural problems with that.
We always do that.
No, we don't have one after that. When was the last time we had one after our committee of the whole?
Last meeting.
Well, last meeting. Why? Because it was a special meeting. It was called special. It's not regularly scheduled. This is regularly scheduled.
But even special ones count.
Can we please get over here, Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
It's almost 11.
We're taking Councillor Kemp off this thing. So is that's a motion? Was it seconded?
Moved and seconded.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, we have Councillor Unger and Councillor Hold'em opposed, balanced council in favor. And Ms. Harrison, you did get that motion, did you? You're
That's
happy?
correct. It would be to have our
right, so-
in-camera council meetings following the Finance Policy Committee, the whole meeting.
That was the intent? Okay.
So we don't have any more Monday morning meetings? Is that what you just heard?
Or we just want to attend those meetings?
Your Worship, just from staff's perspective, we have a potential problem in that Council has eliminated one of its monthly meetings, in-camera meetings, and that means that business will be delayed while it waits for that meeting, and that meeting will likely be lengthy. So as long as Council is okay with
I
it.
really would like to see the in-camera at each meeting, really. I think.
Your Worship, I'd like to respond to that. I disagree with it. I think staff can bring the information a week earlier, and then we have a week to digest it instead of maybe that morning digesting stuff and doing it. So I totally disagree with our administrator on that. Just bring the information forward a week earlier.
We voted already, so next day.
There's always a reason why we can't change something.
We don't have no